start with the Cunningham Township business first, and then we'll go to the city council meeting. And the first thing on the agenda that we wanted to talk about here is a public hearing.
Okay.
And I want to be able to read the correct information on the public hearing. Okay. So I'm going to open a public hearing of the Township of Cunningham, Urbana, Illinois, for the purpose of receiving public input on the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual budget. I guess we need roll call. All right. Would you please call the roll?
Trustees Brown,
Here.
Hazen, Hersey, Jacobson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum. All right. So the purpose is to receive information about the annual budget for the coming year. Is there anybody who would like to come forward and make a statement concerning the township budget? One person wants to come forward.
Hello, my name is Kate Moore.
Okay, Kate, yes.
I was an employee of Cunningham Township Assessor's Office from April 2012 to April 2018. I worked for 6 years under Dan Stebbins, then another 3.5 months for Wayne. I'm here to comment on the budget increase Wayne asked for at last month's meeting, more specifically the $71,000 personnel increase. I feel it is not necessary and a waste of taxpayer money. At last month's meeting, they stood up and told you that the number on the back of the card represented the last time the property was viewed. This is very much not the case. In fact, they did even mention that it could be that they were viewed, but had no way of knowing. While I worked for Wayne, I tried repeatedly to show him what work had been done and how and where to find that information. He said no every time. It was made very clear to me that even though I had worked there for almost 6 years and he was brand new to the office, that I was inferior to him and he did not need to listen to me. This is not the first time one of Wayne Williams' mistakes cost the Urbana taxpayers money. While they were showing you the property cards that most had the year 2011 on the back, they never once directed you to flip the card over and see what the actual assessments were. I myself called and requested 6 random cards pulled from different neighborhoods all over Urbana and checked the assessments. One had only been reassessed once since 2011. All the rest were 3, 4, or 5 times each. I feel like them not telling you that information was deliberately misleading, which I know Wayne Williams is very capable of, as he lied to me repeatedly every day I worked for him. Whenever I said anything about his lies, he said, "You cannot prove that, or that would be very difficult for you to prove." I have a list of all the neighborhood factors and multipliers for Cunningham Township from the year 2009 to 2017, which you could all look at. This is easily available through the township. There's lots of neighborhood factors. There's not multipliers, which is the number the state gives you if your assessments do not meet their 33 1/3 median. From 2013 to 2018, there was a 1 multiplier every year. There is, of course, constant maintenance that needs done, and that, yes, the employees need to be doing that constantly. And there are, of course, things that maybe didn't get picked up. The commercial properties, yes, definitely needed to be looked at. It was a project Dan Stebbins, who was assessor for 8 years, never took on. Dan Stebbins had a drug and alcohol abuse problem that went from bad to worse to the point where he only came to work to pick up a paycheck the last couple years. When we presented the board with this information repeatedly, we were told there's nothing that can be done. He's an elected official. So I am glad that those kind of changes are being made.
I am kind of concerned that this is not a discussion about the budget, but it seems to be a rather personal issue, which might be better broached at a different venue.
But it is about the budget increase. We spent days and months and years walking neighborhoods, looking at properties, and comparing them to what we have on the cards. He's saying that he needs a whole other person just to do that job, whereas that job was done constantly. So yes, it does need to constantly be done because there are constant changes, but he's asking for $71,000 for another person. Champaign Township employs 3 full-time, 1 part-time employee, and they have 25,000 parcels. I don't know the exact number of Cunningham Township parcels, but Wayne Williams states that there are 8,665 residential parcels that this one person would be looking at. And I highly doubt that the commercial properties make up that extra to get to the 25,000 Champaign has. And Cunningham Township already has 4 full-time employees, plus he stated 3 interns. They already have more staff than Champaign has, and Champaign has way more parcels. So I don't know what all the other employees will be doing in this time that this one extra person is needed. I know that just today, we had a call in Ford County from someone who tracked down Kim Hooper because no one at Cunningham Township would help her with her senior paperwork. So could you please help me, because no one there or no one at Champaign County will do it. So I'm just saying that they do not need to spend that extra money on another person. Thank you.
Is there any other input from the public at this time concerning the township budget? Yes, Eric.
I'm sorry, may I ask a question?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah, so just to be sure I understand, you believe that the reassessments were continually being made on residential property? And that it's really only the commercial property possibly that got way behind it? I mean,
Yes,
okay.
everything always needs updated.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely. It's the residential is very much kept up on.
And that was a positive statement from the spokesperson.
Pardon?
Since the audience can't hear her comments, I'm just repeating that. She said yes.
No. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other person who comes forward at this point to speak before the township during this public hearing, I call it adjourned. Time is 7:10. Okay, we're going to go on now to the meeting of the township itself, Cunningham Township. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Here.
Hazen? Hersey?
Here.
Jacobson? Here. Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu?
Here.
Okay. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is additions to the agenda. Oh, first the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Are there any changes to the minutes?
So moved.
Mary Alice Wu moves it.
Second.
Eric Jacobson, trustee. Is there a discussion, corrections? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving them indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, that passes. Are there additions to the agenda? All right, we're coming to public participation to the township. I haven't received any other people who wish to speak to the township meeting. Is that true? There's nobody else in the audience who wishes to come forward to the township? One person does. Are you going to bring forward your, are you finished filling that out?
This is township?
This is the township. Okay. All right. We're going to move then to the committee to verify bills. Daniel Chenoweth, supervisor of a township.
Thank you. So the town fund had $123,769.08 in expenditures. General assistance fund had $63,516.36 in expenditures. The total is $187,285.44. Largely, as you'll see in the bills, this is for Q4 for social service disbursements. So the high number for town fund is largely social service disbursements at the end of the year. We had 113 general assistance participants, down 1 from last month. And the numbers have typically stayed the same in terms of homeless senior citizens and average age. We did have 3 rental assistance approvals last month, which is very low, and we had 14 this month. So between the 2 months, we're seeing an average, but we had very low and slightly higher this month. I would be happy to answer any questions about the bills.
Okay, starting around the corner, Mary Alice Wu.
So thank you very much for providing the Busey statement. I appreciate it. And it looks like you had put in the numbers that are relevant to the code for the account code next to it. So can you tell me a little bit on the 24th of June, there was a Motel 6 Urbana charge for $166. We stopped paying for hotels. Is that correct?
Yes, except the Angel Donor Fund.
Okay.
So Friday at 4 o'clock, a grandmother and her 4-year-old grandchild showed up at Cunningham Township. They were sleeping in their car. The windows were broken, so the water was actually rushing in. If you remember Friday, it was like a torrential downpour. Our staff went and duct taped and plasticed the windows. We used Angel Donor funds to put them up in a hotel through Tuesday. We had an emergency advocacy appointment with them Monday morning, and we essentially directed them to centralized intake for the homeless. The grandmother had some level of income, and so she's currently applying for rental assistance. We do provide emergency assistance as per our rules when there's a life or death situation, and we felt that this was a serious and egregious situation. We do. And we use donations from the community to provide those services.
All right. Thank you.
Bill Brown.
Under training for assessor, is $7,000 in 1 month. Was there that much left in the training budget for FY19?
So some of that's going to be covered by line item transfers at the next meeting. Is there any particular expenses that you had a question about?
No, it just looks like, did you guys do all this training in June, or is this, were they
some
billed
of that
for,
is
you were
some-
billed for previous training?
Right,
Or
some were billed for
or
previous
billed
training.
for training that's going to be coming up later in the summer, or?
Yes. So to reserve the seat, you have to pay. And, some of these seats, they go really fast, or if a seat opens up, you want to reserve it, so you have to pay.
Okay. So do you know how much was left in the training budget for FY19?
I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
but
So whatever wasn't left in the budget for FY19, you're applying to the budget for FY20?
no, the two budgets are
Okay.
totally separate.
Oh, so you're going to transfer money from something that wasn't
Right.
used to this, I see.
Right.
But you don't know what yet?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Jared.
I guess my question was for Danielle. Wayne,
Accurate.
take your back. I didn't know where we might be coming across this, and I've visited the township, so I know the situation over there, but I was kind of surprised to see that there was a parking ticket that was paid. It's the bottom of page 5 under other expenses for clients. And can only assume that it must have been paid at a meter in your parking lot
Correct.
for someone. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I'm meeting with parking enforcement on Wednesday about this. So the parking lot is owned by the township, and it's administered by the city per a parking agreement that dates back to the 1970s. Until a month ago, approximately 6 weeks ago, parking enforcement was not enforcing parking against our staff or number of our participants. So for about a year and a half now, our participants have come to, many of whom have like not even a dime in their pocket, have learned that they can essentially park in the spaces. I've requested bagged meters, and I was directed from finance to public works. And so we're in the process of getting bagged meters for our participants. There's a woman who came in who received a ticket. We, I believe, contested it. We also contested some tickets to our staff. And we're having some misunderstandings between the city and township on parking. I'm hoping to clarify those things, but in the meantime, we paid a ticket that came to this, and it was paid out of angel donor funds. At this point, that is not something I'd like to see going forward. I consider it very unusual, but it seemed inequitable that this person, amongst all of our participants, would receive this ticket, and we were not able to have it forgiven in our parking lot, and she was facing a deadline. If we can receive payment back from the city for that, I would be happy to receive that payment, but I feel like we need to have a face-to-face conversation first, so we went ahead and took care of the payment out of those funds. So I don't think you will see that in the future going forward, and it's certainly not our practice to pay for those tickets, but there's some relationship issue we need to work out.
Okay, keep us in the loop as you guys try to work to resolve that, because I assumed it was for a client, and I very much think that we should not be charging or ticketing folks who are at the worst points of their life
Correct.
at most times when they come to the township.
Yep. Agreed. I'm not really sure why the change happened. It was sudden. It didn't involve any communication with the township, and I would like to address it, but I think, again, face-to-face is the best way to have these conversations. We value our partnership with the city. We appreciate, the services that the city has offered, and we'll have a conversation with them.
Okay, Eric.
In the interests of full disclosure, I think fixing tickets is a terrible thing, and I would never do it, except one day. We had a volunteer here who was in a meeting with us, who was donating her expertise for a particular meeting. And she had put money in the meter in the lot outside, but she got a ticket because she parked head in. And it didn't seem right. So I did mention it to Bill Gray, and Bill said he'd take care of it. So in my entire life, I did fix one ticket under those circumstances. And I think it's okay to fix this one.
All right. We're not going to take a vote on that, though. Any other comments about the township budgets? Anybody would like to make?
These are the bills.
The bills, all right. The verified bills, yes, that's right, okay. So, all right, so we've just discussed the bills. There was, is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve town
bills?
fund and the general assistance fund.
Yeah, I misspoke. I said budget, but it was the bills. Okay, Jared Miller, make a motion. Anybody second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Eric Jacobson. All right, further discussion about the bills? Okay, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that they are approved. Other reports from officers?
In your memo, there's two. I speak to social services in the budget, so I'll speak to those at those items. Just wanted to say we had about 100 attendees at the Self-Care Community Repair Wellness Fair this last Saturday from 3 to 6. It was a sweltering 90 degrees. We had yoga, dance, massage, haircuts, nail care, books and resources, and lots of kids' activities, which, yes, did include me breaking down and turning on the sprinkler at some point. I just want to thank our community partners, the Urbana Free Library, CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative, H2O Salon had donated time. We had several barbers, nail care, et cetera. We've thanked, it's about 20 different providers, and we have thanked them on our website. So I just wanted to say it was a great success, and it went to show that no matter what your income level, you are entitled to take care of yourself and seek wellness. And I felt it had a great vibe and was a great community event. Also, I just want to say that Township Garden is bursting with greens. There's so many greens and peas and beets. It is a free garden. You pick them. You can come and pick them. We have a bag. We have scissors. You can do it when we're not there. Just take what you need and don't take any more. And it's not just for our participants. It's for all our neighbors and friends, everyone in Urbana. Feel free to come eat. There's plenty, and it's going to go to seed soon. So please come and pick at the garden. I think Wayne has a officer's report, and so I'll give him the floor.
Okay, Wayne?
So actually, I didn't quite have a officer's report because I was preparing for the budget, but I do want to take this time. Last month when I was here, it was not my intention, and I don't believe I said that assessments didn't change. Okay, assessments can change from a multitude of reasons, like board of review decisions, factors. What I want to do in this upcoming budget, and I can speak to it later in the budget, is reassess, which is different from what has been done in the past, which is factor, right? So the difference, and I'll be brief, between a factor versus a reassessment is a factor is a uniform percentage increase or decrease to all properties in a neighborhood. So, for example, if you're going to factor something and increase it by 2% in a neighborhood, that means you're increasing the one-story houses, the two-story houses. If you don't segregate the factor out by property class, commercial property also gets factored by the same amount, condos. All these different types of property appreciate and depreciate at different rates. So what happens is if you rely solely on factoring as opposed to reassessment, which is coming up with a brand new value, during a reassessment of a neighborhood, all property, the values will change, but at different rates, right? Because it's going to change relative to the specific property's characteristics. And this is the difference that we're going to be doing now with that this budget pays for versus what has been done in the past. So I want to make that very clear. Yes, assessments change because of factors, because of multipliers.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, Bill?
So when they're referring to they look at every couple of years or something, you can't change an individual property's value. You can only change the neighborhood factor or something? Is that how it works?
No, not necessarily. So you can do a neighborhood factor, which is the uniform increase or decrease of an entire neighborhood or class of properties within a neighborhood. However, you can look at properties individually if you do the entire neighborhood, at which point every home will be looked at individually for an assessment change. And that's a reassessment or a revaluation.
And have you done like a sample or anything to determine if there's a need to do that? How do you know there's a need to do that?
So there are assessment statistics that we look at, right? That we look at uniformity and fairness, right? So one measure of uniformity is what we call the coefficient of dispersion. And what that measures is how far away are the values from the median, right? And you say you're doing a good job if your coefficient of dispersion is under 15%. When I took office, January 1, 2018, the coefficient of dispersion was like 1650 something, right?
So in language I could understand, does that mean that the houses aren't selling for what they were assessed
No,
at?
no, no,
Or does
that
it have anything
means-
to do with what they actually sell for? What determines that coefficient of dispersion?
So you look at you do sales studies, right? But what you're looking at with the coefficient of dispersion is, so you have the baseline, which is the median, 33 and a third, right? What the coefficient of dispersion is measuring is how far from that median, right, each sale is. And you want to be within 15% up or down, according to guidelines, state guidelines. So we're over that when I took office. The only way to correct that is reassessment, because if you factor a neighborhood, that neighborhood's coefficient of dispersion stays the same. The median of that neighborhood will change, but the coefficient of dispersion, the statistic that measures equity, stays the same. There are other measures of fairness, like price-related differential, right, which measures whether higher price homes are going to be or tend to be underassessed and lower price homes tend to be overassessed. And we were out of range for that statistic. And we were out of range in the direction of lower price homes tended to be overassessed.
So then with the coefficient of dispersion, when you're using that, you can get a different coefficient for each neighborhood.
You can, yes.
And so when you decide which neighborhoods to prioritize and reassess first, will you go to the
Right.
ones with the highest coefficient of dispersion?
Absolutely. Well, there are other factors. You don't use any one statistic by itself, but yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, Eric.
I'm sorry to ask the same question again, but I still don't understand coefficient of dispersion, so maybe let me see if I can pose a form in which I might understand it. When you go into a neighborhood, okay, and I'm going to, well, in the first place, is the coefficient of dispersion a property of a neighborhood? Do you compute that neighborhood by neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
And township-wide.
And township-wide, okay. So you could compute it on both levels, okay. So, and how you define a neighborhood, well, I don't know, that's a little bit intuitive, but maybe that's not central to my question. So what are the records, the numbers that you actually look at? Go into a neighborhood, you look at records, and you calculate a coefficient of dispersion. What are the numbers that you actually use to calculate that?
The numbers come from the previous 3 years of sales.
Okay. So one of the factors are the previous 3 years of sales in that neighborhood.
So let me give you an example,
okay.
right? We have neighborhood 21, which is Capstone Quarters, right?
Okay.
Which has not been reassessed, factored, or otherwise since I believe 2011, right? This is a condo complex. They have over 200 units, some 2, some 3, some 4-bedroom units, right? We reassessed Capstone Quarters, right? Which means we looked at sales prices, and we applied a value to the 2-bedroom units. To all the 2-bedroom units, we applied a different value, slightly higher to the 3-bedroom units, and a value to the 3-bedroom units. Now, we looked at, the thing that jumped out about that neighborhood is that the median was low, right? The median was in the 20s. William, do you have the exact, it's like 26, right? So roughly about 25, 26% below where the median should have been.
Okay.
But because they're condos, and condos are relatively easy to value, right? The numbers were really tight around that median, right? So the coefficient of dispersion was like less than 5%, right? So we don't look at any one measure. So they were low and consistently low, but the numbers were clumped around.
Okay. Now, when you say they were low, does that mean that the sales prices, that if you multiplied the sales price by 3, it was lower? If you multiplied the assessed value by 3, it was higher or lower than the sales price?
It was lower than the sales price by about 25%.
Okay, so they were assessed too low by about 25% based on this sale price to assessment ratio. Okay, I got it. And, okay, so a dispersion value would be this ratio of sales price to assessment, whether different types of property really had very, very different values of that sales price to assessment, then that would be a high dispersion. If they had pretty much the same value, sales price to assessment, then that would be a very low dispersion. Is that correct? Am I getting that? Am I getting close?
No. William, you mind taking a stab at coefficient of dispersion?
Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Good
Can I say
evening,
just
that's
one,
all.
one thing, because what I want to understand, because he was saying, Wayne was saying that you value a particular property. Okay, so is this an assigned value based on the average price of square footage that would go through, that would be throughout the county? Or something like, I didn't understand. I need numbers. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not a mathematician,
Can y'all-
Lord knows.
Okay, I guess the easiest way to kind of explain it is what you're trying to measure is uniformity. If you're doing something to one house, you sort of want to be doing it to all the particular properties. You don't want one person paying, I guess, the higher value and someone that's their neighbor with the same exact house paying a lower value. So that's what this is to correct. But
Okay.
what it is if something sells for 90,000,
Yeah, give me some
Okay.
numbers.
the assessed value, if it was 100% correct, which we all know that's chasing sales, would be 30,000. If it was a 90, because it's a third of the value. So what the ratio you're trying to achieve is that the assessed value divided by your sale price gives you a ratio. That ratio should be 0.3333, or a third of the value. In this case, it was not. So when we're looking at it saying it's 24% of the value instead of 33% of the value, now all we do is take the 3 years of sales that are given to us by the county
3 years of sales of
Yes.
what? Of properties in
Of-
the area or?
of that particular neighborhood, because you get the whole township, you'll get your ratio for the whole township. But what we did was we broke them out individually, because as a township, it looks as if it's correct. But if you divide it out, you start seeing some of these people are high, some of these people are low. So of course, when you average them all together, it looks right. But it's not fair to someone if it's supposed to be at 30,000 and you're setting them all at 20, and somebody's supposed to be at 30 and you're setting them at 50. So they're taking on the slack of the other people. That's where the inequities come in at. So the ratio is literally the assessed values divided by the sale prices, and it gives you ratios. Of course, there's some weightedness going on because some sales are invalid, some sales are valid, some are multiple sales. So you kind of have to have an opinion at that point.
So assessed value divided by
Sales price.
sales price. The lady behind you is shaking her head no.
You know,
In my head, yes, right then about what he was saying, but I definitely shook my head no.
Oh, because I was just wondering if you had something to add.
well, you know what, this could become a topic of a study session for our next township meeting, which could be informative to all, rather than duking it out at this meeting.
I'm just trying to get some clarification. I'm
Okay.
trying to understand exactly, like I said, because I'm not a mathematician and I failed algebra. I'll be honest. So when they start talking value, like words, but not giving me a number that I can at least use as an example, I'm just not very, well versed with that. So I process my information differently maybe than other people mathematically. So that's why I just wanted to get some clarification regarding, and when you gave the formula of assessed value divided by sales price,
Yes.
that helps. So if something is an assessed value of $35,000, but it was sold for $50,000,
You're above.
you're above the, what's that word he used? Something conversion coefficient.
The coefficient of dispersion,
Okay.
that comes, it's funny because you're saying it's not like one set of sales that gives you your coefficient of dispersion. There's a study of sales. There's the entire neighborhood or the entire township.
So that's
that
why
has
I
to
was
go into
asking,
this.
are we talking about an average of the amount of sales, and then you get an average,
It's-
median
Oh,
from
median.
that?
I was like, yeah, we
Isn't
never
median and
average.
average the same thing mathematically?
No.
Okay, my bad. All right. Mean, that's right. I knew it was one of those M words. And yes, I did used to teach, but not math. But what I was saying is that, okay, so it's the middle number.
Yeah.
That's what median is. Median is the middle number.
Yeah.
So if I have $50,000, $70,000, $60,000, $10,000 and all that, then what the median number, the number in the middle is going to be something along that area, right? Okay.
No.
So now I'm understanding that. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand. And you did a decent job of explaining it. Thank you.
Mary Alice?
I promise I have a very quick question. So in some neighborhoods, you have a lot of sales, in some neighborhoods you don't. It doesn't look
Yes.
to me, I just like Googled it really quickly. It doesn't look to me like it takes into consideration the number of sales per neighborhood. Is that right?
We actually do.
You
That's
do.
why
It's just not in the coefficient of dispersion.
you want to, okay.
Quick question. You can tell me, you can explain it later.
Oh.
The answer is kind of. Is that
Oh,
right?
I'm like, kind of.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's kind of.
I'll be in on that.
Does that satisfy then the discussion of clarification? Okay. And we could probably explore this to get this, a little more training on this in the future. Yes, well,
Can I
Yes.
make a comment?
you may make a comment.
Okay, something that was stated in the meeting was there was someone that needed help with a senior exemption. And I kind of man that office every day, as you have come and seen. And if there's ever an issue with any taxpayer that needs help with their senior exemption, we actually have an open door policy. I'm not sure how that happened. I apologize if that happened to that person, but that's not the norm of our office by any way. And I wanted the taxpayers that are sitting at home to know that. If
I
you
always
have
go
an
to
issue,
Perkins.
come sit down. If I can't resolve it, I will drive with you to Birkins. I've been to a nursing home to have someone fill out their paperwork, so I didn't understand how that kind of got missed. But I just want the taxpayers to know, like, no, we have an open door policy for them. As for any person, even if you want to just come ask about your assessments, I promise you we'll answer.
Very good. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, so that, I think, covers the reports of officers. Now we're going to go to unfinished business, which the first item is ordinance number T 2019-05-001, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year 2019 to 2020, which was introduced in May 6, 2019. Is there any more comment about that? Do we need a further discussion? Yes, Mary Alice Wu.
All right, so I have a couple of questions, Danielle and Wayne. So looking over the budgets for last year, for this year, and then the updated budget, the proposal was to at first increase the GA from 265 to 280, and then last meeting you talked about 304 to match what the city of Champaign is doing. Is that correct?
It's actually driven by what is essentially the urging of the Department of Human Services and the township officials of Illinois supervisors to set the general assistance level at 304. And essentially, the language mandates it unless the budget does not allow. So that's the language in the resolution. That actually is what drove Andy and I to go to 304. In addition, the general assistance allowance has not kept up with inflation since the 1990s, and therefore, I would like to do an increase. We had budgeted an increase this last year. My concern was I wanted to, the rolls jumped pretty significantly at the beginning of the year, and so I did not publish a new allocation amount in this year. I kept it as is because I was concerned about the budget. So essentially, you'll see in the budget to actuals, we have, at the end of the year, you'll see that we've, in the financial report, that we've spent 100% of the GA budget. We've not gone over budget. And that was because we kept it at 265. Next year, essentially, we're looking at going to 304. I've controlled the numbers to some degree. I'm also making some changes about how we do payments. So that we're not paying out as much at the beginning. And I'm hoping that we'll be able, I've set a budget that I believe is a reasonable budget, and we'll be able to stay in line with that at the 304 amount.
So two follow-up clarifications on that. The first one is that when we had talked about going from 265 to 280, you said that that would increase the budget by 50,000. So that's an increase of 5.6%. By going from 260 to 304, it's an increase of 14.7%. So what is the impact on the budget? What's the bottom line?
Well, essentially, if you look at the budget, I budgeted more for general assistance. And the situation that we're in is we have a surplus that we can spend from for general assistance. And if we were to get to a point where we were not able to keep enough in the bank, we'd essentially have to bring down those numbers and in alignment with the condition that, unless the budget doesn't allow it or the surplus doesn't allow it, we would have to drop that amount. I will be bringing some recommendations to the town board about how to manage the general assistance budget. And the overall cap of our levy is both for the town fund and general assistance. And in this budget this year, not only are we spending surplus, which actually I think we should, but we've also balanced more funds into the town fund to allow for some makeup on the assessor side. So you see the assessor side there's some significant increases on the assessor side. These are essentially one-time or one-year increases so that we can address some of the issues that were raised during the assessor's report. So I think that what we'd like to do next year is to basically balance back some of those monies from the town fund back into general assistance.
So the two other questions about the GA fund, the first one has to do with the salaries under the personnel, which is on page 19. This year it was at 88,000. Next year it's proposed to be at $110,000. So are we increasing staff there? It didn't appear to me that there was an offset in the supervisor unrestricted fund. The personnel seems to be, actually it's just a little bit higher, which would say to me that that's going to be a raise, but which is fine. I mean, everybody deserves a raise, but I'm curious why you're almost $22,000 higher in the GA personnel.
So not only did I provide raises this year, which were modest, but I also, on both sides, but I also have added staff on the general assistance side because of our caseload. So essentially.
So we're adding a position here, a part of a position.
We have, on the general assistance side, we have 2 full-time staff members, and then we have 2 part-time staff members. With the part-time staff members, they have, they understand that their positions are temporary as budget allows.
Okay, my last question has to do with the rental assistance. So last year we had budgeted $35,000. In the budget you presented in May, you had budgeted, I think, $72,000, and now you have budgeted $80,000.
Correct.
So I'm pretty familiar with the new program that you did in terms of eviction prevention. And so my question is, what are the remaining funds for? What specifically? Is it security deposits? If you could expand on that.
So the rental assistance program pays for eviction prevention, and it also pays for deposits and a portion of rent for homeless individuals to get into housing. Folks have to have they can't make over a certain income. We're raising that to 200%. And their lease has to be no more than twice their income. We are I budgeted, hoping that we don't spend it all, but Regional Plan Commission submitted numbers to me on the number of calls that they've received for rental assistance that they're not able to fulfill. And in theory, they're supposed to send people over to Cunningham Township who live in Urbana and to City of Champaign Township who live in Champaign. My understanding from conversation is that didn't always happen, and therefore I'm concerned now that we have a county-wide program. One, our county-wide program our program is growing, but I think it's been slow growth. But I am concerned about significant referrals coming from the county to Cunningham Township. So I basically allocated funds for that with the hope that we can come under. Now, our assistance amount has not gone up. It's $600. We have been able to negotiate with City of Champaign Township to go up to 600 from 400, so that's great. And it kind of levels the playing field, and RPC will have the same amount. But I essentially, every time I look at the numbers that RPC has, 2,800 calls for rental assistance or homeless assistance last year, I get scared. And so we will verify, of course, we can verify through the lease, and we also check a home ownership through the assessor's office to ensure that the landlord actually owns the property and it's an Urbana property. So we're very strict about only giving to Urbana, but I do have concerns that we're going to see an increase. I also spoke to the Landlord Association, and they were unaware of our program. And since I've spoken to them, we saw a bump from, our average about 8 to 14 this last month. So I'm just trying to figure out what that sweet spot is in terms of where we're going to be at in terms of our client base. And I've budgeted, I think, a generous amount that I think will take care of that.
So what have we spent this year in that account code, roughly speaking?
We are over budget, and I can get to that information. That's another piece of the.
So at 6732.
I want to say we're at 67,000. Let me just check. Is this okay? At March 1st, we were at 52,000, and I think we're at 67,000. Which is another reason why that's just the budgeted amount. So we blew the budget last year, and then I've increased it into anticipation of this next year.
All right, and then my final question is for Wayne, if that's okay, unless other people,
sure.
You know what, before you move, I guess I should let other people ask questions of Danielle.
It was
I apologize.
66,000. I just looked it up.
Thank
It
you.
was 66,000 this year.
Okay, so before you move then, Bill, do you have a question for Danielle?
First one on that last item, so with the eviction prevention, I know there's a limit of getting it once every 2 years. Do you also cross-check with the local agencies like Champaign and Regional Planning Commission, see
Yep.
if anybody else has given them something within the last 2 years?
So our rules were actually that each agency only looked at their list. And the rule for that agency was just once every 2 years for that agency. As of July 1, we've changed. And we actually have a complete list of everyone who's received assistance. That also hopefully will cap some assistance going forward. But we have a comment list, and we basically cross-reference that. We sync it once a month. And soon, we will all be using the homeless management information system, and so we'll have real-time data to make sure that we don't accidentally provide assistance.
Okay, and then a question on kind of, I know we have several one-time items, again, 100,000 for IMRF contribution to try to catch up on that, and you rolled over the 50,000 for a grant. The assessor, if we approve it, 71,000 for other, and another 30,000 for appraisals. So with that, that's about 250. Are there any other one-time items you can think of?
Let's see. Appraisal admin dues. I'm looking at our list. No, I think that's correct.
That's about it.
Mhm.
Okay, so that still leaves about a 350,000 gap, right? Because, I mean, if we budget, I know some of them hopefully are on the high end. So that I'm considering as kind of our deficit. That going forward, we're going to have to figure out either which programs to cut or eliminate, or if they've produced results and hopefully driven down, homelessness or something, then maybe that it will take care of itself, but that's not very likely. So going forward, we need some plan, right?
So the losses are almost entirely in general assistance. As you'll see, it was close to balanced in town fund. The town board chose to decrease the levy by $200,000 because you thought the rolls were much less than they actually are. And I've shown you the history going back to the 70s of what those rolls look like, and especially in the last decade, it's very clear that somewhere between 90 and 100, 110 is going to be average. So I think we have to have that discussion, because essentially we wouldn't be looking at a deficit of this amount outside of that levy reduction, which put us in this situation. So we either have to look at cutting social services, we have to look at cutting a program, we have to look at increasing. So that's our next conversation. What I'd like to offer you in the future, once we get through this piece, is essentially what a balanced budget would look like and some different scenarios. We've been deficit spending partly because that's appropriate for the time we're in. We have, with our deficit spending, been able to get a lot of partners to the table to spend significant dollars on programs. So we went from spending as an entire county $45,000 on eviction prevention. This next year, we are budgeted at $190,000, and only $80,000 of that comes from us. So we leveraged $110,000 from other spaces with that money. So I think that's the piece. We also, with the homeless shelter, we were able to get up to $200,000 in fundraising around shelter, and we're looking at contributing up to $50,000. I'm not sure if we will use that whole amount. We put that aside last year, and we didn't use that grant monies. So essentially, I think, my recommendation is we use the surplus that we have to basically leverage other monies at the table. We do some special projects that catch up, and then we have to pull back. Essentially, we have to pull back in terms of our spending, and then we have to look at, for our core programs, what kind of increases. And honestly, it's going to be, trying to recapture some of that levy, I think, is something that we need to talk about. Otherwise, we talk about cuts, and, those are always difficult conversations.
Okay. Yeah, and just to be clear, we aren't going in the hole. We have a surplus, but we're just spending down that surplus. In some cases, we're considering it investments toward the future, especially when we can leverage other dollars like you were talking about.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Eric?
Just so I'm sure I understand, the $304 level for general assistance, that is the same level that Champaign Township will also be
Correct.
Given this coming year. Okay.
Mary Alice?
I have one final question for you, Danielle. So Carol had brought up a good suggestion in terms of the rapid response for the social services and having kind of an outline of how that would work. So I just wanted to ask you, perhaps at the next township meeting, if you could present to the board what your plan is for that.
I need 2 months, but yes.
2 months is fine.
Yeah, because I want to meet with the committee. I want us to be able
Yes.
to talk about it. And I feel like, given that I need to get things to the town board the week before, but yes, I'd be happy to, and I
Great.
think that's next on deck.
Thank you.
All right, and then,
I do have a question for Wayne then.
okay, so then we had 2 questions coming up for Wayne. Let's switch again?
Yep.
Thank you, Danielle. Okay, let's start with Mary Alice, because she was the first to have
All
a
right.
question.
I do. I have 2 questions. The first one is we talked at length last year about travel and training expenses. I believe it was roughly around $20,000. You had said that that was a one-time occurrence and that it would drop down. So I'm going to ask you why it hasn't.
Training is necessary. We are embarking on changing the way that assessments are being done, moving from a cost-based approach on how we do assessments to a purely market-based approach to doing assessments, and that's going to take further training.
All right, so what can we expect next year? Or basically, I'm asking you this. Is this a one-time increase in training and travel, or are you foreseeing this to be
No,
a continued amount that you would like to spend on travel and
And so
training?
part of this is because also the quad is next year, right? So I expect it to at least be cut in half.
So you expect to have a $10,000 training and travel budget next year?
At least cut in half.
All right. My second question is relates to the additional position. I'm wondering if you can give me, excluding your own salary, a rough range of salaries in your office. It can be rough.
You said excluding
Excluding yours.
and excluding the potential other position?
Yes.
35 on the low to 52 on the high.
Okay, so 71 seemed rather high to me.
It's not, so that's not for one position, right? So we have interns now. The way we paid for those interns was because the chief deputy had not been hired for half the year. My chief deputy started in January.
All right, so you're saying that the 71,000 is to pay I think you said you had 2 interns,
3.
is that right? Okay, so
3.
3 interns, it's under personnel other.
Right.
So what is your proposed salary for this incoming one-year person?
Depending on qualifications, on the low end, 28,000 yearly, on the high end, 35.
So we're paying interns $40,000?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant for the 1-year position. No, the interns make between $10 and $11.50 an hour.
So how much are we spending a year on the interns? 20,000, 30,000, 10,000,
Give me a moment.
5,000?
It was the way it was budgeted. I believe it was 12 times 20 times 3 times 52. And so that comes out to 37.4, and I think should be closer to 35.
So roughly, you're budgeting $35,000 for the additional person,
Mhm.
36,000.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Roughly.
Roughly. So we have, basically, you have 12 hours for interns. You have
Wait,
3 of
12?
them. You have 12 hours for,
It's $12 an hour.
$12. So you have 20 hours for interns. You have
Right.
3 of them. So that's 1.3 FTE. Correct?
Yes. Actually, no. No, the math doesn't quite work that way because
Sorry, 2020, no, 1.5 FTE.
that's
my bad.
closer.
And what role do the interns play?
So what we just got a new camera system. All of our property data is on paper right now. We are transferring that property data from paper into our camera system, so it'll be searchable. It'll be in a database. It'll be easy to query. It's not easy to query right now. So, for example, what I cannot do is query every house with 2 bathrooms and only 2 bathrooms.
Sure, but we had said that that would be a year project, so where are we in that project right now?
So all the record cards are scanned right now.
Okay.
Right? So it was a couple steps, right? I said scanning the cards will take a year, right? A calendar year. We have that, it's pretty much finished now, right? The second part of that is getting the data from paper to digital. And then the next part of that is actually using the data.
All right, well, I'm going to come stop by and see what these guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Because
Please.
I don't want to,
I've
I don't
invited
want
you
to
multiple
presuppose
times.
that
I
I
just wanna
understand,
put that on the record.
understand the process without, it just seems like a lot of staff to do this process. Roughly how many cards are there?
3 short of 11,000.
Okay, so there's 11,000 cars, there's 1.5 FTE scanning them and entering in the data per year. So when is the project going to be done?
This fiscal year.
So this fiscal. So we can expect the 71,000 to not appear next year?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any more?
Yes, there was. Bill Brown, did you want to also ask a
I
question?
think that answered some of my questions. I mean, I've made that comparison before between Champaign's office and our office, and have roughly the same staffing, but they have like twice as many properties. And it concerned me, when Dan was assessor, and then understanding the problems in that office, I kind of understood the problem. But now that you seem engaged and active in your office, so with your added contribution to the mix, it seems like the existing staff should be enough. And I understand now you're doing extra work to get these cards digitized and searchable. It just seems like I hope you aren't trying to do everything at once on things that could be stretched out over a couple of years that you could accomplish.
So, and I understand that concern, right? So right now, we're at the point where almost all the cards are scanned. We're going to actually do some reconfiguration of the office and actually move all of our cards to the basement. But I do understand your concern. Another kind of long-term project that will go out over many, many years, is to actually get it to the point to where we can archive everything and get rid of the paper. But to do that, you have to follow very specific guidelines from the Secretary of State Office of State Archives Office.
And I think
And
Charlie
we have
has
a-
dealt with some of that.
Right, and then we have a large historical backlog of cards and other items that need to be scanned so we can preserve them and eventually get rid of the paper. So
Okay,
that's
just
the
reach out,
long-term
use all
goal.
your
That's like a
resources, and-
6-year goal, but no, I do understand. I do understand your concern.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, does that cover then all the questions we have for the supervisor and our assessor? Okay. All right, thank you for the officer's report. Okay, yes. Sure.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes. go ahead,
I'll
please.
move ordinance number T-2019-05-001, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2019-20 for approval.
Is that our second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Bill Brown. Further discussion at this time? Okay, yes, Bill.
I'm tempted to cut that 71,000 in half, so if anybody.
I would support you in that.
Well, okay, then let's vote on. I'll move to cut the 71,000 to 36,000.
I'll second that.
So there's been an amendment to the budget, cutting the extra positions funding from 71 to 36 and a half, or to 36? 36,000. Okay. Is there a discussion on that?
I'd like to hear why you guys want to cut it. I mean,
Why, or?
you have a lot of questions about why the cost was, but why do you guys want to cut it?
I just think that the existing resources could be used efficiently to maybe prioritize which neighborhoods you need to do first, and if there's, a little more to do at the end of the year, then you stretch it out into the next year. And it's up to you whether you use interns to do that or hire somebody for, $30,000 or whatever you can do.
And
That's my
Mary Ellen?
thoughts.
Does anybody, Mary Alice, do you want to make a
No,
comment?
I pretty
No.
much concur. I was probably going to abstain from the budget because of that, so I'm happy that Bill mentioned and made that motion, because I would support the budget with the cut in half.
Okay. So let's,
So Wayne wanted to add something. Go ahead. I want to hear what,
yeah. And then also, we want to know that Dean Hazen is is attending this meeting by remote connect, semiphone.
I am present.
Thank you, Dean.
That's a little scary.
okay.
So with that, the reason why I want to do this now is because, like I said, we're moving to a sales-based approach, purely sales-based approach to residential assessments. The way to do that, we're going to have to create basically financial models to come up with the assessments. The only way these models work is if you have the data in a way, in a format that the models can use, right? So the effect of what you're doing is either we go out and collect the data, so there are two parts of that, getting the what we have in, but then also going out and verifying. So one issue is you have the garbage in, garbage out problem, right? If this is going to work, we have to have confidence in the data. And two, you need to have enough data to make the model viable.
Does that satisfy your comment?
Do the models work neighborhood by neighborhood?
They can, but I'm afraid that no one neighborhood has enough sales for a viable model. So we're going to have to do some combining and really, so the neighborhood that a property is in is part of the input. And so kind of the model will determine exactly how much influence the neighborhood has on the price, market value.
And so couldn't you accomplish the card conversion and digitization for a couple of neighborhoods and then run the model?
Well, and then, so here's the other problem with that. We can't predict what homes are going to sell in 2018, right? Because we do these 3-year we're in 2019, I'm sorry about that. We do these 3-year studies, right? And because we don't know what's actually going to sell in the future, knowing which neighborhoods to do, I mean, obviously, you want to look at the neighborhoods for reassessment based on the statistical models, but in terms of which neighborhoods will produce the most data for the models, you basically need a crystal ball. That's why it's important to do as much as you can now, so you have a good financial model to predict market value.
Mary Ellis.
So I assume that you're using last year's sales prices. You have to use last year's sales prices, right? So are you 2018?
16, 17, 18, and then it'll drop and use 17, 18, and 19.
Okay, all right. Are those records already digital? So sales prices are digital, right?
So one issue that we have is while we have our new system, the county is also integrating their new system. So there's a lag between they're the repository of that data in digital form. The repository in our office is on paper, right? So we're waiting on the county to actually get us the most recent data, and
I guess my point is that you don't need to enter in the county sales data. The county sales data is already in there.
No, what we're entering are property attributes.
Okay, so you're re-entering the property attributes for each of the sales? Is that what you're saying?
No, for every property.
No, I understand that, but you said that you are using, your equation uses the sale price of that neighborhood versus the assessed price of that neighborhood, right? So you have two pieces.
No. So you're thinking of two different things, right? What you're talking about is how we assess or how we measure uniformity and fairness. But in terms of what I'm doing, right, and my role as assessor is predicting what the market value of a particular property will be when they sell. The way to do that is we take the property attributes and then compare it to historical sales records and then predict the market value. So what we need, that's why we need those property characteristics into our system, so then we can build a model.
You're looking for apples to apples.
Right.
So you could do a stratified random sample and get all that information to create your model, train your model. I'm looking at Bill. Anyway, I agree. I think that, you can certainly, I would be willing to pass it with the 36,000. I will abstain from voting on the budget if it is not. And I would say to Wayne, if you want the additional 35,000, then come to us with a proposal mid-year.
Well, I just like mid-year. Okay, and I've invited all of you to come to the office to kind of
I'll be visiting, I promise.
show you.
How does, the county's using DevNet now, right?
Yes,
And are we using something else?
we are.
Okay, and do they talk to each other?
Not yet.
If they talk to each other, will that reduce any of this workload?
Well, the grunt work of this is reading the property record card, putting what's on the property record card into our digital system. So
And none of that exists in DevNet?
no.
Okay.
So we're talking about big work, but cautious budget. All right, so we have a motion to make an amendment. Let's make a vote on that. Do you want to, yes, Jared?
Just one comment before we vote. Seeing, as you put it, Mary Alice, come back to us mid-year, and I think you could still go ahead with your plan, Wayne, with a plan that you need to come back and justify again the other half of this expense. You can do what you were planning on doing anyway. Come back to us mid-year for a budget increase. In light of that, I would support the amendment to reduce that in half.
Cherise.
I guess the question I have is for Wayne, how would the budget cut affect your ability to hire someone or to get anybody even part-time?
Well, at this point, right, I would have to choose whether to keep the interns or whether to hire someone full-time. There's just no way to do it both. And if I do both and I get to the point to where I run out of money in December and I have a project that's 50% complete, then it's,
So can you do one or the other?
It's a 2-month process to pass a budget, because you're talking about passing a new budget, which means this entire 2-month process, we would have to start over, unless I'm wrong about that, Fred.
It's an amendment to the budget.
No, you're not.
Right.
Like I said, you still aren't going to have more than your levy. So I don't know where you're going to get.
And let's speak into the mics.
From our surplus. So what we have to do
To what, a budget?
Can-
It's the same thing going through the whole process of what you're doing now.
Can we,
Speak
can we
in the
hear?
mics.
In the mic, please.
Yeah. Have a conversation here so we all can share that.
As I understand the questions, what would you have to do to amend the budget to make these changes later on? It's the same process that you're doing now. It wouldn't necessarily take as long, but the steps are the same.
So the 1 month notice, the,
You'd have to have a tentative budget designated and notice and a public hearing and a vote on the proposed amended budget. So it's all the same steps.
Okay, so that's the situation. It's possible, but it would take some effort to make that happen, just as much as it has to this point. All right, so let's make a vote then, I guess. Are we ready? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, which would reduce the amount of the budgetary line item for assistance down to 36,000?
Point of order, this sounds pretty official. I wonder if we should have a roll call?
Okay, then let's do a roll call vote, yes. Good point.
Okay, this is a vote on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Okay, trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
No.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
No.
Wu?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that passes. So we have an amended budget, and is there further conversation about that? Are we ready to vote? Okay, would you please call the roll for that?
Trustees Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have a budget that has passed. All right. I write down who made the amendment. Was it Bill and Mary Alice? Okay. Okay. All right, that takes care of unfinished business, and now we go move to new business. Thank you. Okay, this is resolution number T-2019-07-013R, a resolution relating to participation by elected officials in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, Bill Brown makes approval, Mary Alice Wu. We have talked about this before in another instance, another venue. Is there discussion? Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Need a roll call.
Another roll call? All right, that's right, these are new.
Trustee Brown?
Yes?
Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next comes resolution number T-2019-07-014R, a resolution authorizing an agreement with the County of Champaign for the Geographic Information System Services.
I'll move approval.
Bill Brown moves approval. Seconding by
Second.
Eric Jacobson. Is there a discussion?
Can somebody refresh my memory what this is?
Okay.
this is a annual contract we have with the RPC, Champaign County RPC, for access to GIS. GIS is what is our mapping software that we use.
Okay.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
a handy tool.
I remember now, thank you.
Okay. All right, this is going to be another roll call vote.
Trustees Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Okay, that's approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion on social service funding allocations. Supervisor Daniel Chenoweth.
I promised Charlie it was going to be a short meeting. Sorry, Charlie, I'm not in charge. So, Okay, I have given comment on the mayor's suggestions for changes. Essentially, there's, between the committee recommendation and the council recommendation, there are four changes. The first is to reduce CU Fair volunteer coordination from 15,000 to 75,000. The second is to increase ARAMAC, which is
7,500.
7,500. Somehow, I got about 4 hours of sleep last night. So ARAMAC to go up from 5,000 to 7,500. It looks like the Youth Assessment Center was added from 0. It was not recommended by the committee to 5,000. And then it appears that, I'm assuming this comes from council, and it was news to me when I saw it this morning when I received this for the first time, that the Champaign-Urbana area project STEP and Truce, STEP would receive 2,500 and Truce would receive 3,500. I've commented on the other changes. I just want to say, one, I received the city council's recommended allocations today. I had a migraine the Monday that you met, and I did review some of the tape, but I actually didn't get to the end, so it was news to me. I have serious concerns about a last-minute addition of funding CU area project STEP and Truce programs. I believe CU area project does amazing work in our community, as does many of our applicants. That said, the STEP application was wholly incomplete. It lacked income data, measurable outcomes, capacity information was unclear, and it only listed 2 funding sources, City of Urbana/Township and private donations. They listed 1 other collaboration with agencies, so they scored low. Compared to other applications, the STEP application scored one of the lowest using the criteria sheet. The Truce program, although a stronger application, lists a total of 6 families served last year. There's no income data, and the budget is entirely administrative and training. I do not support fundings for these programs, despite the fact that I think CU project is fantastic. There were a number of programs that we did not fund, some of whom I've been working with very closely for over a year, who are close partners with the township, because their applications were incomplete and they scored low, right? So I'm in a position now where essentially you're asking the township, perhaps the city, I'm not sure, in this case the township, to essentially approve funds which are unfair to other agencies that had similar problems with their application and were excluded for that reason. Now, I suggest CU area project apply for rapid response funding if applicable, and we will determine what that looks like. And future, they can work with the township and the city to gather technical assistance for their application to ensure it's complete. We provided that technical assistance for any applicant who wanted it. CU area project did not avail themselves of that. This is not blaming, I'm just reporting. So I find it very difficult. I don't know exactly where this is coming from, and I do not think it's appropriate for the town board or the council to make changes to recommendations, especially in situations where the scoring was so low. It really, it was very concerning and upsetting to me to see this recommendation. Again, not because of the content of their work, but because of the process which we have so carefully laid out. I do have similar concerns to some degree with Youth Assessment Center, although they've been a fundee in the past. They did not score very high, but they certainly had a complete application. So I step aside on that issue. But with this, I have some significant concerns. I believe that you should simply go with the committee's recommendation plus the mayor's suggestions, and I would suggest as the supervisor that you remove CU area project. I also just want to say the process, although it's been improved, has been difficult, and I really want to sit down, and I've told this to the mayor, I really want to sit down and discuss the process next year, in that we're trying very hard to get away from the person who lobbies the hardest gets funding, right? And I think we've done a great job in that way, but I think it's really important next year that we look at quantifiable impacts for Urbana residents and for township funds, especially now that they are more and more scarce with the increase of our programs, they need to extend the work of the township. I do not support peppering money around to various agencies in town. That may have worked at a time when we had a surplus and the programs were at historic lows. But I have worked very hard to increase the programs at the township. I encourage every town board member to come to the township. You will see us sweating it. We are sweating it in that office. We are packed in. Yes, we increased the staff. Come and see how many people are standing outside our door. Come and see how many more hundreds of people we are serving each year. And the assessor's side, they are sweating it. I am in the office every day. They are packed in. I can't get access to the copy machine because the assessor's staff are constantly recording property cards, which is great. I think that's wonderful, but it's like the hustle compared to what it was 4 years ago when this town board was largely silent. It is a totally different day at the township. And I think it's for the better for the residents. We are focused on equity. I'm not going to argue with any decisions that you made this evening. That's not I am not the assessor, but I will definitely say I feel like the tone of the town board is one of a kind of surveillance, and I would like to see you all come and visit the office, be with us, meet our participants, your participants too, and see the kind of work that we're doing. And this is why you're seeing the budget increases that we're asking for. And this is why we're trying to make sure that the social service funding actually hits the spot. Because we have just desperately poor people in this community who are completely invisible. Homeless mothers who are trading sex for a place to stay every night. It is despicable. And so we have got to stop being asleep at the wheel in this community and start making some change. I am speaking out of turn for the social services, but really, I encourage you to come, open your eyes, and see what's happening in this community.
Well, we're very aware that there's a new dynamism in the township office, and we do appreciate that,
Thank
Danielle Chenoweth. And this is a discussion about the allocations. We're making recommendations. We're not actually going to be voting, but we are going to direct staff, i.e. your township employees, to forward. We're going to forward to you the recommendations, and I guess that will be the result of the end of this discussion.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to make comments at this time or recommendation? Yeah, Bill Brown.
Well, I will say our discussion over the administrative cost in our last discussion was to try to prevent administrative waste. And we need to do that if we're going to carry some of these programs forward, because we're spending down and we need to make sure we aren't wasting money.
Yes, and I support this, and I think, honestly, from where I'm sitting, I know that there's additional staff needed, but I really can't speak to the level of staff that's needed. It's outside my area of expertise. What I can tell you, this is the piece, is that the staff who work in the township now are hustling. On the assessor side, on the supervisor side, if you come over, and I encourage you, you can drop by anytime, you will see, except for smoke breaks, which we ask, and poetry breaks, people, they have their 5 minutes outside because sometimes things are very intense, but really the level of service, the professionalism of the service, the expansion of service, the way that the seniors were actually mailed to by the assessor's office to receive their entitlements, and the way in which the assessor's office, I would call what has happened in the past gross neglect. And in a lot of ways, we're trying to catch up on that. If you want to catch up slower, I feel like you do you, right? So if you think that we need
want
to
to catch
pull
up
back
smarter,
on our piece,
okay?
I support it. What's that?
We want to catch up smarter.
that's fine. I don't want to hear that, are they, do you need them interns, are they standing around? Just come over, you'll see very quickly that that's not the case. That is my concern, is there's no standing around happening at the township.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Yes, Sharice.
In response to regarding, number one, I have been over to the township offices, and I went there specifically to get help regarding my mother's tax assessment. The other thing is I lobbied very heavily for STEP and Truce because I think that they are a new organization. The stuff that is required on the application is not necessarily something that they have right now because it started in February.
That's my understanding.
Okay, and so they're going to have limited information regarding any of that anyway. So I feel that because, and I lobbied for them just as other council members have lobbied for groups that they felt very strongly and passionately about. I lobbied for them because I feel that they work with children that are at risk, and when you talk about folks that have been thrown away, in some ways, those are the children that they work with as well. And they are, it's a new program, and they are just getting clientele in as they can, or as are willing. We all know that people are not always willing to try to improve whatever their situation may be as well. So they work with those children because a lot of people don't want to work with them. And these are the people that Courtney Carruthers is trying to work with, and Josh Mayer, I think that's his last name. But they're the ones that they're trying to work with. And they go to the Ready School, at least Josh, I know he does, and he pulls kids out for counseling and for interventions and everything else. So this is something new within the community, period, as far as what they call restorative justice and how they can work with that. So that's why I lobbied so heavily for them. And I'm sorry that their application may have been wholly incomplete. I'm sorry that it lacked income data or measurable outcomes. It's kind of difficult to get any of those things intact and in order when you've only been around for 4 months. But it was my recommendation that I even said that they should even try to do it. And it's difficult to get started when you have limited resources and there's no way to get the word out there in such a short period of time. So as far as that's concerned, then what I would ask is that that there be something, maybe a special workshop for those groups that are just now starting, or those organizations that are just now starting to try to contribute to community issues, so that there can be something said about how they fill out grant applications or so forth, because this is a new organization. It's not an organization that's been around but for literally a few months. Okay?
Right. Jared Miller.
So Danielle, and this was largely our discussion about approving these funds in addition, even though they were not included in the original thing, and I understand and felt uncomfortable approving them due to the incompleteness of the application, but I also understood Sharice's argument about folks being new and not having enough time. And I'm wondering if it might be possible for us to consider, rather than a singular application period, a continual application period, or multiple application periods for grants, rather than like this is your one shot during the year to get it in, and if you don't do it, then, well, you're screwed until next year because we're not going to award you funds. Because new organizations start all the time. Somebody may come up with something super fresh and it might be really successful, and we may need to consider it. I know we're setting aside emergency funds for things such of that nature, but I don't know, maybe this is a solution to the problem of, well, we didn't make this one, there's another one 3 months from now, come back and apply again. So that would be something I would,
Yeah.
you know,
Even
thoughts from you
even I would
guys.
consider that something kind of equitable. Instead of, once a year, maybe 3 times a year, or once every 4 months, just see if there have been any changes, if there have been any getting over that learning curve of even how this process works.
I would like to just comment that that would take staff time at the supervisor's office, which would be duplicating and triplicating perhaps during the year, which we'd have to consider. Mary Alice.
Yeah, speaking as somebody who was on the committee, we spent countless hours actually reviewing the applications, discussing the applications. I know staff, both Danielle and Sheila, spent countless hours meeting and sitting down with people, helping them fill out their applications. So a couple of things I'd like to propose. The first one is I think that this was actually the mayor's idea originally. I think that there should be a separate application for new organizations, for emerging organizations, something that's shorter, something that's more realistic. And then I think that we should build something into, let's call it the Rapid Response Fund instead of the Emergency Fund perhaps, and have that short application where somebody could come in a couple times. But to have these rolling cycles of approval systems, it's going to take a lot of time on everybody. I think there were 3, 4, 5, there were 6 of us on that committee, Danielle, is that right? So my 2 recommendations are A, shorten the form, make one for just an emerging organization, and the second one perhaps include something in the emergency fund / rapid response fund.
Okay, and I take that's going to be part of our then direction to staff. Other comments? Yes, Eric.
Sharice, as she indicated, did take the initiative to champion CU area project, but I supported it. I supported her strongly. I know Courtney, I know Josh, but more importantly, I know somewhat what they're doing, and I was persuaded, in spite of the fact that their application, I really appreciate the time and the effort and the thoughtfulness that went into evaluating the applications. But at the end of the day, I felt that CU area project is doing something that's unique, that nobody else is doing, and that's absolutely vital. The work right on the street with people who are maybe going to fall through the cracks if otherwise. So I agreed, I didn't take the lead in this, Bruce took the lead in this, but I agreed to step outside due process this once. I don't mean to make this a precedent, although I won't say I would never do it again, because there isn't as well thought out as our process was for all of this. There's no such thing as a perfect process when you're dealing with something as multivariable as how to help people and communities who really need help and are in complicated situations. So I felt this was a unique situation, and yes, so we did kind of step out of our boundary, out of our comfort zone, and obviously listening to Danielle's reaction, I'm even farther out of my comfort zone, but
That's what I'm here for, Eric.
but I will still stand up for what we did.
Bill Brown.
Yeah, I was impressed with Truce's presentation to council, if that's what you call lobbying. And I was also I understood from the discussion last week that any contribution to Truce would be matched by the Regional Planning Commission, so that also influenced my willingness to support the Truce contribution. And I asked to see the scores on these, and I don't think that was ever provided to us. So you can say they scored really low, but if we don't see the scores, then we have no idea how they score. So maybe in future years, we could actually see the scores you guys come up with.
Then I'd like to just say myself that I appreciate all the times when city council members or township members have the fire to advocate for something they really believe in, and if they do it very eloquently, which I think we've heard in the past. One is tending to support those special projects, because we all have a special project in our hearts someplace in there in the community, and it's great to be supported by fellow council and township members.
Can I just respond?
Yes,
Thank you.
Danielle.
I'll try to be brief. So my first question is, in this case, and I know because I was the kid writing grants who didn't know what I was doing, but we had 2 workshops where we were very clear, and we asked people, come make appointments with us. Here's our card. Here's Alyssa's phone number. Here's my email. We can review your application beforehand. Like, they, if I just feel like we were willing to do all of that 100%, and it didn't happen in this case. They did not, at least they did not come to me to talk through the applications. And so that's the first piece. The second is we had lots of new organizations. For example, CU Win Recovery is a recovery home for women coming out of prison. I've worked with them for over a year, and they submitted an application that had some incomplete aspects and was a new organization that didn't have the track record to be able to stand up. And so it bothers me that we would support, one new organization and not others, because they're all deserving in that way. I am not falling on my sword about $6,000. To me, my concern is about process. It's not about the dollar figure. STEP had 6 families that they served so far to date. I think it's just too soon for them to come to a government agency and ask for money. STEP, not Truce. I know Truce has mental health funding. So, I think you do your grassroots funding first. You build it past 6 families, which is a very, very small amount. We did the same thing with GROW. They came to us when it was too early, and we told them it's too early. The argument that the mayor made about CU Fair is that although they've been in existence for a while, they're still leveraging up. So I just think a lot of the things that qualified here, they apply, and ultimately, I really think they could have had a successful application had they talked to us and allow us to review the application. And so I do support not quarterly. That would kill our office. I would not appreciate that. But we are looking at rapid response funding, and I think that you should ask them to submit a complete application. We can help them. I will do technical assistance. I will walk through that process. I just don't think it's appropriate to move forward with this and not the others when we're talking about having another midterm cycle, and that's an opportunity for them to come forward. But again, you're the town board. I'm the supervisor. I do not have budget authority over the town fund, only as a general assistance fund. This money comes out of the town fund, so do what you want.
Okay, so is there then further discussion? Is there a comment that would like to make a direction to the staff?
Yeah, I think in light of the new information provided, we could leave. I would be in favor of leaving off the CU area project and leaving the rest as stated in the current spreadsheet, and asking staff to bring us a resolution or ordinance, whatever we need to fund those.
Jared.
I would just also like to say that that was my original suggestion when it was initially brought up, that they complete the emergency or rapid response application and apply for funds that way. But we did approve it, and I'll still stand by it. But Danielle, I know 4 times a year, maybe not a full application process. I'd just like to get a thought real quick on if it was a limited application. What if you only took 5? You know what I mean? Instead of processing a full board, you say, we have a limited number of spots open. This is how many. We'll take 3. We'll take 5 at this time. What about something like that? Other than I'm just looking for any solution that is not just a one-time-a-year opportunity.
Well, my proposal is a rapid response grant, which would be a midterm grant, and it would have to be, it's a new organization, it's an emerging need. They're responding to community-based violence, and we would have a different grants process. That's what I think that we should look at doing, and I'm happy to bring a proposal, working with the city staff on that, and we can discuss it in the coming months.
Because we haven't put anything to paper as far as describing the rapid response
No,
thing, correct?
You just voted on a budget. We don't have a framework, and so we'd not disperse until we have a framework.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested to see the discussion on that, and because maybe that is all it needs to be to get new folks in. But the way it sounded when we originally discussed it, it sounded like it was going to be much more limited to like something that was super stringent. So I think.
Well, what I'm hearing is that in some ways our process may not be inclusive of new groups in the way that the town board would like to see. And so I think we should really consider how do we address those newer groups that are just getting off the ground. And I think the town board members have a right to advocate for the agencies. I just want to, stand for a particular process and fairness and equity in this case.
Well, in addition, I would just like to say, too, that the amount that is being asked to be allocated is about a third of what, the original request was. So maybe a little less than that. So they're not asking for full monies or anything like that. Because a little bit can go a long way, even with either one of those groups, they can make a little bit go a long way. And that's, I don't see that the amount given, which is not a lot, I don't see how that really impacts on the allocation that much right now, actually. They may not, and they could, it'd give them also some time to enhance their abilities in filling out the applications for the future. That's something that I think could be worked around. So I'm still advocating for them to be financed now before the school year kicks in, because that's when they do most of their work. That's when they are working with kids the most during school year.
So maybe we want to do a straw poll on how we feel about this particular allocation.
Can I ask a process question?
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
So I think, Danielle, I heard you say that when we looked this over, we approved it at council. So we had a committee meeting last week. So it's my understanding we just moved it forward to city council, which is directly following this. So, yeah, I just wanted to say it hasn't been voted on by council. Okay, all right. And then,
yeah, I understand the process is still in discussion.
okay, all right, I just want to be sure. And then, so I understand in terms of, there's no resolution or anything on our agenda here, so how is this approved, the allocations?
It's just direction to staff to set certain amounts so that they can go
Gotcha.
draft agreements.
Okay, thank you. So we don't even need to vote on it, is what I'm hearing you say.
No, but eventually you need to make a decision and direct staff to set certain amounts for each group.
Gotcha.
Right, which is probably what we should be doing now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're all in
Sure.
agreement that we wanted to continue forward with the adjustments that we made last time we discussed that were recommended by the mayor. And I will still support sending the amounts forward for CU Fair.
And,
Or co-op, I'm sorry.
all right, and so where does this leave CU area project?
I support
You do, okay.
as we voted, or not as we voted, but as we,
But as is
as
indicated
was
on the-
discussed and as is indicated on the sheet.
On the sheet,
I still
right.
support that.
Right. All right, is that the general consensus? I guess I support it. Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'll support it. I think they need the message
Yeah.
that they've got to do a whole lot better next year. I gave a parting message to CU Fair on their way out the door, and so these folks should get a message too.
All right. Yeah, Mary Alice.
I actually do not support the change. I agree with Danielle that there were other groups, several groups that we didn't even read because their applications were not complete. We had a pile of, we're not reading you because you didn't complete your application. Now, I hear you, Cherie, and what you're saying in terms of the work that these people are doing, and I think they are doing really good work for the community. Jared's suggestion in terms of how we can accommodate that would be to develop this rapid response and then in 2 months' time, go back to them and say, please submit. This is kind of another small funding opportunity, and we'd be happy to help you with that. So I'm not in support of doing that at this time. If they came back with a complete application, as we deem, it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact application that we're doing right now. It could be a modified one. I'd be absolutely willing to support funding them for this fiscal year.
All right.
Point of process.
Yes, go ahead.
I thought there was a motion on the table to remove that. So can the clerk just clarify where we are in the process?
There's no motion directing.
There's no motion.
Not yet.
And whatever is done here has to be mirrored in council as well.
Okay.
So
There's no motion on the table.
So does this group feel comfortable with following the suggestion that Mary Alice Wu did, that we're still open to funding them, but that the way of funding them would be through the rapid response funding mechanism which we're setting up?
From what I just heard, we had 4 people who wanted to continue forward as it is listed on these recommendations.
All right.
I think Mary Alice was against it, and so was Bill.
Okay, so Eric.
Yeah, so this is a, in any case, the item on the agenda is discussion.
Right.
So this may be endless, but there's no decision yet tonight.
But don't forget Dean.
Yeah, Dean is
Dean, you still there?
Yeah, Dean, are you interested in weighing in on this in one way or another?
Is he
might have
there?
lost him. We might have lost him.
I'm so sorry for the delay.
He fell
Yes.
asleep.
So we're having a conversation, Dean, about whether we would fund $2,500 to the STEP program and $3,500 to Truce, which is being advocated by some members of the council, but the cautionary element is that their applications were incomplete and that there were other programs that also had incomplete applications, which were eliminated from consideration because of that factor. The alternative would be that there's going to be setting up a rapid response funding from extra monies in the treasury of the township, and they're invited to return and reapply when those funds are made available in a few months.
Yeah, I agree with Mary Alice's suggestion on that. I apologize. I had my mute button on.
Okay. All right. Yeah, all right, I guess that's not, yeah, I guess we can't make a decision really. So, okay, thank you. We'll come back to this at a future time. That's really the end of our agenda for the Township Board. Therefore, with no further business seeing in front of us, I call us adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have a small break. We're going to have council meeting start in, say, 2 minutes.
I haven't seen that letter that you guys got.
All right. All right. Thank you. So, we have now a meeting of the Urbana City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Council members Brown,
Here.
Hazen. Let him get off mute.
Dean Hazen?
Hersey. Here. Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin. Dean, are you there? May have lost him.
All right. This will be the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting from June 17th.
He's out.
So moved.
Are there any corrections to it?
Second.
Well, I can ask now. Okay, moved by Jared Miller, seconded by Eric Jacobson. Any corrections, additions to the agenda? Not the agenda, but to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they pass. All right, additions to the agenda. Let's see, we have,
Dennis.
yes.
Staff has asked us to remove one item from new business ordinance number 2019-07-037, an ordinance approving a major variance to 1 West University Avenue from ZBA case number 2019-MAJ-02 to the next meeting, and I'd support taking it off.
All right, very good.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Sharice. Anybody who would object to that? I think staff needs some time to sort out a few of the details before we talk about it. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. We'll see that coming up again next meeting. All right, there's lots of public input. We have quite a lot. But I was thinking, well, I wonder if we should have staff report. Do you want to do that first? Charlie, did you suggest that? Staff reports?
No, there isn't staff report, but there are 2 items from the committee.
That we could do, yeah. All right, so. All right, so do you want to wait on public input yet? Because most of the public input is going to be on something that has not related to the agenda.
I would like to see it first.
Okay. Public input? Okay. All right, well, then we'll do that. So we have quite a lot of people who would like to speak, and because of the number of individuals, we're going to have to limit a little bit the time that's allowed for all. First, I'm going to go through the names of people who I understand would like to make a comment concerning issues here that do not wish to actually speak before the assembly. First, we'll do Bishop King James and Dr. Evelyn Underwood, who wish to address the topic that they are continually concerned about the condition of the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. They would like to make this comment to the City Council, but do not wish to address the council in person. So thank you for that. All right, we have a number of people who are concerned about the special use permit requirements that are being proposed by the city and adopted, and this relates to how it affects the IMC, international, not international, it's the Independent Media Center. And those who do not wish to address but wish to be state their opposition to special permit requirements that are being requested are Jane McClintock, Alan Axelrod, Karen Medina.
No, I'd like to speak.
You did, okay. Okay. Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood. It's not quite sure here. What about Rebecca Obchowski? Yeah. Do you want to? You're going to speak. Okay. Before or at the time?
There's no other.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. We don't have an agenda item. Okay.
This is just for now, yeah.
All right. And I guess that's the number of people who just want to register their thoughts without speaking. All right. So now we have a lot of public input on this topic, and so I'll just start calling people out. And I think many of us you are going to be speaking similarly, so I think that the best thing to do would be if you'd like to come up in a group of a few people, or if you'd like to come up individually, but not have more than 3 minutes. Ali Greer.
Actually, I would like to go first.
Okay, Karen.
I'm the president of the board.
Okay, Karen.
Thanks. Yeah. And my statement will be long enough that there will be 3 of us to make the entire statement.
All right.
Hi, my name is Karen Medina. I am the current president of the board at the Urbana-Champaign Independent Media Center. And I want to put on record that there are at least 25 people here in support of the IMC. Background. The Urbana-Champaign Independent Media Center has been a beloved community institution in the heart of downtown Urbana for 19 years. Our mission is to foster the creation and distribution of media and art that emphasizes underrepresented voices and perspectives, and to promote empowerment and expression through media and arts education. In 2005, the UCIMC purchased the downtown post office to convert it into a community media center and arts center, as well as to preserve this historic Urbana building and keep postal services in downtown. In a given year, the IMC hosts over 1,000 public events, bringing over 200,000 visits every year, bringing vitality to our downtown, which has historically struggled. UCIMC has over 500 volunteers per year who contribute the amount of labor equal to 25 full-time staff and over 6,000 contacts. We provide fertile soil for people to plant their ideas at the IMC, and they have. Books to Prisoners has shipped 150,000 books to people incarcerated in Illinois, winning the Illinois Governor's Award. Makerspace has hosted dozens of regional makers fairs, bringing tens of thousands to downtown. The Bike Co-op started as a program in our basement and has blossomed in our basement into its own organization with an additional campus location, recycling thousands of bikes into the community and instigating a bike renaissance in town. We have one of the longest running art galleries in Urbana. We have a new archive of social movement history in Champaign-Urbana with historical documents not found anywhere else. We operate a 24/7 radio station with multilingual programming. Our performance venue is a central location for Pygmalion Music Fest, Folk and Roots Festival, Girls Rock, Boneyard Arts Festival, and other beloved Urbana events. We hosted emerging artists who now have international fame, including the hip-hop Mother Nature, Caribbean American poet and author Stacy N. Chin, and folk legend Charlie King. The city of Urbana has been a long-standing valued partner of the IMC. By last count, 70% of grantees of the Urbana Public Arts Fund host their events at the IMC. The IMC is the site of multiple startup companies receiving City of Urbana business development grants. We have hosted historic preservation workshops with the city, teaching residents how to restore 100-year-old windows. 15 years ago, when the Urbana Free Library was not able to provide wireless internet, the IMC and Pixo did so, and at our expense, so that patrons could experience this new technology. And notably, the City of Urbana and the UCIMC partnership secured a prestigious National Endowment of the Arts, Our Town grant. Due to the historic exclusion of youth, especially youth of color, from downtown Urbana, we focused the grant on an open scene project to put youth of color at the center of designing how UCIMC and downtown generally could be more welcoming to youth and marginalized populations. The current situation and why I am here now. Recent action by the City of Urbana administration threatened to shut down IMC operations completely, shuttering our doors. The IMC membership met yesterday to review and discuss these threats from the city. And the IMC was with near unanimous support that we go to you, our elected officials, to request your intervention. In March, there was an event where an African-American man was seen leaving the IMC with an alcoholic beverage in hand. This led to the police entering the IMC where they found alcohol, suspected marijuana, and were not able to locate the event host, who was present until the police arrived. There was no violence or threat of violence. This event was wholly outside of the IMC policies and procedures, which strictly prohibits alcohol, drugs, and smoking at the IMC, as we are a safe, all-ages space. That said, the IMC contests the argument that the March 15th event was a threat to human life, health, or safety, or property, as activities at the IMC were similar to that of any downtown venue at the same hour. Monday, March 17th, 2019, I, President of the Board, Karen Medina, and Stuart Levy, member of the IMC and new board member, talked to Sergeant Lotion at the Urbana City Building. At that meeting, it was made clear that special events were the problem. Studying the Urbana definition, alcohol and street closures were the definition of special events. I shared that information with the board of directors. The IMC board took action to reaffirm the no alcohol policy. We posted signs orienting all future event hosts to the no alcohol policy and requiring security plans for nighttime shows. The IMC board received a March 22nd memo from the city, which with careful reading was interpreted to impact only events with alcohol. On May 3rd and 4th, the IMC hosted the Immersion Festival, an event funded by a City of Urbana Public Arts grant and heavily subsidized by the IMC, who contributed $1,600 in space usage. The May 3rd and 4th event was coordinated closely with the city, took place without incident. The Immersion Festival reaffirmed the IMC board's understanding that special event permits were specifically for events with alcohol, not for all public events. June 3rd, 2019, we were shocked when the city hand-delivered a notice of violation citing two very peaceful events, May 11th and 12th, as events that violated the earlier letter and imposing the maximum fine of $750 per incident, or $1,500, citing the two events. Both events had clear security plans, board members present, and had occurred without incident. The city's letter also contained threats to take the IMC to court. This second letter had clearly a different interpretation spelled out, that all events open to the public, whether IMC programs or not, whether they had alcohol or not, would require the IMC or third-party host to submit an application for a special event permit 45 days in advance or face a significant fine for late submission. Pay $100 in processing fee if the event was not produced by the IMC, and submit a security plan. The IMC leadership was shocked by the lack of communication and collaboration from the City of Urbana. where we hold trusted relationships, as well as an unbelievably all-encompassing net the city was casting. The city's approach is like putting out a house fire by flooding the whole village. Under the restrictions demanded by the city, the events we would need a permit include Sunday church gatherings, a reading group, a children's musical recital, open hours of the bike co-op, a poetry reading, a dance performance, a staff retreat, a conference, a movie night, a theater performance. This is not hyperbole. We actually had to wait for the city's executive department to sign off on letting the IMC host an unconference put on by adults with developmental disabilities, a Sunday afternoon music recital by children, and a girls' rock workshop series to introduce girls to musical instruments. We reached out to meet with the city attorney, who directed us to the police department. We held honest and productive conversations with Lieutenant Joel Sanders of the Urbana Police Department, who has modeled a more collaborative approach and listened to our concerns. We have been through laborious special event permit process, and we were able to hold a Pride Weekend event only because of the interventions and advocacy of Joel and Vince Gufston in Public Works. That said, the attendance at that event was never more than 10 people at a given time because our permit was received 24 hours before the event start, and we were not able to publicize it. Following a meeting with Lieutenant Sanders, we received a letter proposing that all public events after 8 p.m. secure a permit. We decided to see what the impact of this might be. In reviewing 51 major artistic events from 2017, which we reported to the Illinois Arts Council, which represent a fraction of our public events in a year, we realized that 30 of these 51 events would have required a permit. We have submitted the document to you that lists these events, highlighting the ones that would need a permit under this rule. They include a photo exhibit, a Juneteenth family event, a poetry reading, an immigration workshop, a jazz festival, a play, a movie screening. Attempts to negotiate on this have been refused by the city. In summary, the special event permit process is an intensive process created by the city for events with alcohol or closure of city streets. Its application to profit arts center who holds mostly free and low-cost events makes no sense. It appears to be a violation of both our constitutional rights of free speech and our rights of peaceable assembly. The current proposal by the city will shutter the IMC. Because our small events usually do not plan much more than 45 days in advance, it makes the IMC an unreliable venue, requiring burdensome negotiations and potentially long lead times to make anything happen. Already, we have had to cancel numerous events or to tell them to go to Champaign for space. Non-IMC events pay only $40 an hour to use the space. The $100 permit fee to apply to the city for a special event permit, the $100 permit fee more than doubles the cost of the events themselves. The administration of the IMC is funded in part by events. Although we charge lower fees than any other comparable space in town, we make up for it in volume, as many small events pay for our utilities. We have already lost thousands of dollars in revenue over this conflict. Long-term loss puts all our programs at risk. There are several important things to note about the IMC. According to our structure, all events, meetings, and workshops, with few exceptions, are open to the public. That makes them public events. The majority of our events bring in less than $100 per event, as most of them are hosted or by or co-sponsored by the IMC. No one is turned away from an IMC event due to lack of funds. Our center is focused on providing a safe, supportive space for marginalized populations such as immigrants, youth, African Americans, Latinos, and members of the LGBTQ plus population. Safety for these vulnerable populations does not mean hired security forces as required by the city process. We are asking the mayor of the Urbana City and the Urbana City Council to advocate that the IMC be treated like the nonprofit arts center that we are, and one whose presence is recognized as valuable to the life of downtown Urbana. Under the conditions offered to us by the city, that is not possible. No one is trying to arrange a normal, peaceable, alcohol-free event, a musical performance or birthday party or art show, such as we have hosted countless times, can now be confident that our space will actually be available. We are asking for you to put away your threats and talk to us. We share the safety concerns with the city. We do not want alcohol, drug use, smoking, or violence on our property or during our events, because we want them to be safe for everyone. We want to collaborate on ensuring every event is safe for all. We want to be a responsible venue and not to be regulated out of existence.
Okay, thank you. And I would, for the record, I'd like to say that I've also been given a sheet here of, I think it was the 51 events that were mentioned by Karen, and are highlighted in yellow the ones which would be affected, which is like 3/4 of the list. And so this will become part of the record. I'm not really sure how we're going to be handling this. I mean, there are many people who would like to basically say they are in support of it, and I am sure that if you came up and said, yes, this is what I agree with, we could take quite a few minutes of our meeting to do that. Maybe it would be more useful to just have a general conversation in council about maybe a way of approaching the request. Yes.
There is one, are they still here? Yeah. There's one group that is actually going through the process right now of getting the permit right now.
Mhm.
And if we could specifically listen to how hard that process is, that would be incredibly helpful.
Sure. All right. So which individuals would like to come forward and talk about that as a representing of the group?
That'd be me.
What is your name, please?
Kendall Arrington.
Kendall Arrington. All right. Go ahead. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Well, we're probably on that list of events that are yellowed out. We use the IMC a lot for music shows, concerts. They have a studio there that a lot of people use. But right now we're going through the process. I'd say we've had this booked since before the 45 days policy, whatever they gave on the 3rd. But the paperwork hit the city's desk somehow today. And he gave me a call and told me that because it wasn't in the 45 days, that we couldn't use the IMC. He said that he had other stuff on his, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can.
He said they had other stuff on his desk. He had about 4 or 5 other things that he didn't feel like moving our stuff over to look at. He didn't feel like getting a hold with the right officials to speed up the process, even though we've had it booked. We use the IMC probably 6 to 7 times a year. This is probably our 4th or 5th time this year. And there's never been an issue. We've never had the police called, never had any complaints. There's always somebody there from the IMC that oversees what we do, and I've never had a problem until this happened today.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
that
you.
input. People who've indicated they would want to speak. Yes, Eric.
I guess, if there's more information, of course, I'm happy to listen to everybody, but the description of what the staff is doing, with the exception of Joel Sanders, the description of what the staff is doing sounds to me incredible, and I'd like to hear the staff perspective on what on earth is happening.
All right, go ahead then. Carol, do you want to make a comment, or?
I'll just make a general comment at this point, which is a lot of things have been said, and they warrant a detailed response, and so I'm not going to get into a point-by-point rebuttal of what you've heard.
Right,
but
we're just taking public input.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I guess what I would like to hear from staff when you're ready is why the IMC should not continue to be treated as an independent, not-for-profit arts center, arts and culture center, as opposed to being treated like some bar that wants to have an event to sell more alcohol.
I can give you a full explanation. We will give you a full explanation.
Right. And really, we're here to take your input. We're not here to debate or to settle the issue this evening, but we certainly can talk about it. First, Jared.
Dennis, I would have asked that folks be considerate of the time, but I do think that everyone who has entered a card who wishes to speak should be allowed to speak, Dennis.
Okay. All right, then. I mean, we certainly have quite a few people who would like to come up. Mary Alice.
I just would like to ask Carol at the next meeting, if that's not enough time, at the following meeting, so within 2 weeks, if you could give us an actual formal response to some of the things that we're hearing.
Yes, and I'd like
Thank
to, I really would like, and I think it's fair to everybody to give a point-by-point,
Yes, if you could just do
explanation.
that at either the next committee or
Sure.
the next city council, that would be appreciated.
We will.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And I want to just say that Jane McClintock wrote an essay on her report, so we'll keep that in the file. All right, so those who want to speak, I'll just start. Al Kagan. I'm just going to bring these out randomly. Three minutes.
Thanks very much. I'm a founding member of the IMC. By the way, I live in Champaign. I don't live in Urbana. Many people who use and participate in programs at the IMC live in Champaign and in more far-flung places as well. So this is actually not just limited to Urbana. It's a regional important resource. I work on the public eye. I think most of you have seen our newspaper. It's an independent alternative newspaper. I've been working on it since I retired from the university 6 years ago. I think it's a very important project of the IMC, and I'd like to just say something about the need for independent media. And if we don't have the IMC, the public eye is in jeopardy. And I think it would be a horrible thing to lose the public eye, which has been in existence for such a long time. And I'd like to remind the Council of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, this is the press. Thomas Jefferson made a very famous quote: "The basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, the very first object should be to keep that right, and were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter." I urge you to take care of this situation and put the IMC back in the position that it was until now for the last 19 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mike Ingram? Again, 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Mike Ingram, Champaign County Board member, also Champaign resident, not Urbana. But what got me to roll across the line into Urbana to come talk tonight was the IMC, and I think I have a unique perspective, partially because my entire adult life I've basically spent as a musician and as a booking venues and promoting shows. Including being one of the co-founders of the Pygmalion Music Festival, which uses the IMC space quite a bit. I've done shows in there as a promoter. I've played shows in there. I've spoken at the Make Racism Wrong Again event that was held there. I've spent a lot of time in the IMC over the years, and I've seen a lot of really great programming happen there. Currently, I also book the Canopy Club and several smaller things like WEFT. I do WEFT sessions booking, and I also book at Exile on Main Street, which is a record store in Champaign, which is currently catching the overflow, and I have a lot of desperate people asking me to, if they can move their shows from the IMC to Exile on Main Street, which is, we have some similar, difficulties with Champaign if we aren't careful, but I think one of the problems that I have here is that it seems like the focus, well, statistically and historically in this town, the focus tends to happen to a lot of events that just happen to be black. But on top of that, if you start talking about events having, alcohol, we sell alcohol freely around town and in bars, and soon we'll be also doing that with marijuana. A lot of times, even if the IMC has regulations and restrictions against having those in the building, people are doing that outside and coming in. You can't stop anybody from doing that at Exile on Main Street. You can't stop anybody from coming to these city council chambers and doing that. And a lot of times the problem that if you have one problematic person, that's literally the only reason that problem exists. So I don't really love the come down on top of the IMC for, even when they're doing their best to regulate things. But part of the problem with this is there are very few spaces in this town, and they're diminishing by the day, where people can go and do things. They can put on things with no real restrictions. They can put on their weird, indie, rootsy metal show. They can do hip-hop shows. They can do anything that they want in a space like this. And if we continue to take those spaces away, for one, it greatly diminishes our ability to have amazing artists in this town, but also it really limits the spaces where people can do things. And we want people to be doing things instead of, everybody that laments all the kids that are out on the street or doing anything else. This is a space where they can actually be doing something. So I planned for 5 minutes. I realize my time is up, but I do just want to say that, I don't know that the ordinance's intention was to do this. I tend to doubt it personally. I feel like it probably wasn't the case. If it was, then I have a bigger issue with that. But if I'm correct in that it wasn't, I'd very much like to see a quick action to clarify and rectify this, because this is very impactful to a lot of the people that we all, as government officials, purport to want to help. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Stuart Levy?
Thank you. I will cede my time.
Okay, thank you. Ollie Greer.
Hello, my name is Ollie Greer. I use they, them pronouns. I will say that I moved to this city partly because the IMC was a badass hub for local artists to do their thing. I am a queer person who is greatly ashamed of this town. It was the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and not one flag was raised in this town to say that you care, that it is safe. Not in downtown Champaign, not in downtown Urbana. And if you say, oh, we have a pride parade in September, what about your adults who are gay in this town? What about everyone else who lives here that's not a student? If we want to regulate people for alcohol, why don't we start regulating the fraternities on campus? If they can drink openly whenever they want, then let's be real. And I'm someone who's teaching at the university right now. I see what the fraternities do to my students and what happens. So if we're gonna sit here and police black communities and queer communities, because that's what's happening, then take a look around. I went to the Pride event at 10 o'clock p.m. I was followed by the police to the back door. And when I asked him, why are you following me? He said, I'm doing my job. And I said, sir, this is a queer space. Your presence is triggering to people in this space. And he laughed at me and said, triggering, get over it. I'm doing my job. I said to him, I said, sir, look in the window. There are 3 children dancing. I am 34 years old. I was excited to go to a Pride event, and I walked into a room where, yes, there was trans flags, yes, there was rainbow flags, and there was 3 children under the age of 10 with their 3 parents dancing. Why? Because we couldn't get a permit to have an event where we could feel safe to drink ginger ale. There's a problem.
Thank you. Carol Inskeep.
Hey, thanks for hearing us out. Carol Inskeep, 606 East High. I'm here tonight because of the issues around the IMC, and I'm here to urge the City Council and the Mayor to take an active interest in these issues and to ensure that the unique and vital role of our IMC is not undermined by onerous or expensive regulations and oversight. The IMC is on a shoestring budget, and everything that happens there is largely organized and run by volunteers. I hope every one of you, and I've seen some of you, but I hope those of you who haven't had a chance to come to the IMC will come out to an all-ages dance party, to the annual Speak Out against rape and violence, to a community book sale, to a yoga class, an art opening by a new young artist, to a church service or a concert or a film or a theater performance. I have attended so many memorable events at the IMC, have met so many people I never would have known, seen so many creative artworks, heard poetry and music from people in our very own community. Urbana needs this place because we need more welcoming spaces for teens and for people of color and for our campus and our community to come together, which they do at the IMC. We need affordable spaces that support artists and musicians and political organizers. We need these events and programs that draw people to our downtown. I take safety concerns seriously. I live and I work just blocks from the IMC, and I attend many events there. Common sense communication and planning between the city and the IMC is key. But please ensure that the IMC is not singled out for unfair, expensive, and burdensome regulations. I'll be following this issue. This IMC is beloved to our community, and I hope you're hearing that tonight.
Thank you, Carol. George Hardbeck.
Hi, my name is George Hardebeck, and I've been
on the board for the third year this year at the IMC. I have a radio show that I've been doing since 2013 at WRFU out of the IMC, and I guess that's kind of a public forum because I keep it as an open door to have conversations there during my show on Thursday nights. As well as starting a 12-step group called Earth Anonymous / ACDC Adult Children of Dysfunctional Culture. The idea being that that we have a lot of dysfunctional patterns in our culture, and how do we deal with that? How do we approach it? And addictions like greed being one that is probably causing more harm to the planet and to each other than any other addiction. So and how that leads dysfunctional culture in a way that an abusive, addictive parent can structure a family in a way that you have a scapegoat, lost child, mascot, all that. You have the same kinds of things in a culture as well. And so we have a culture that is, well, let me just go back to low power radio. Low power radio was designed so that people would have a voice because commercial interests intervened into other radio. So having this kind of radio is an opportunity for people to actually express what they're dealing with and not have it intervened on by, money and power. And so, so how do we do that in our world when we have so many institutions where it's like, well, how, we're going to end up with that kind of control by people who have those kinds of interests, pulling strings and playing games and so on. So if we're, the Independent Media Center is one of these places where people can actually have conversations, and I think that conversations are really kind of the key medium that we have for the Independent Media Center. For us to be mutual with each other, to develop a mutual society, which we're still working on after over 200 years, trying to come back to what the indigenous tried to lay out for us, including a mutual economy, and to try to remind us that we had something like that for most of our generations before we got caught up in imperialism in Europe, speaking for the Euro-Americans here. So the IMC is one of those places where we can move back into reconciliation and restoration and move into a mutual society, culture, ecology, economy, all the above, which we really need to do, especially now in mass extinction and with mass incarcerations growing for profit and so on and so forth. We've got all kinds of abuses that are happening in our world, and this is one of those places that's unique and has helped other places like that to exist around the planet. So, we are one of those places that a lot of cities and geographical regions don't have, and that makes Urbana and Urbana City Council and city as a partner in this, one of those places that can really make a difference in how we take on our world. That's all. Thanks.
And Quackenbush.
Good evening. I've been a resident of Champaign-Urbana for over 20 years, working as an educator. I'm also a mom. I'm here tonight because I value the Independent Media Center, and it's a great community resource that provides a venue for education, for action, and for building relationships with other members of this community. As Carol mentioned, people I would, and I know others would not otherwise come to know and really have a chance to have real meaningful communication with. I attend numerous events at the IMC, such as book clubs, candidate forums, organizational meetings, art openings, theater performances, utilizing the center as an individual, as a teacher, and as a mother, since many events and organizations using the space are family-friendly. I also did a quick survey of my Facebook friends just in the past 24 hours, asking for information about who had attended events there or had organized events for groups that they are affiliated with. Over half of the 20 people who responded in that time said they'd not only been to the IMC at least once in the past year, they'd also secured space for an event themselves. So clearly there are many in our community who count on the IMC as a resource, not only for a learning space as a visitor, but also for organizers. Requiring organizations and individuals who wish to utilize the center by paying an expensive permit fee and applying over a month in advance would have a chilling effect on this valuable community enriching activities that I and others have experienced there. I'd also like to point out that I knew I wanted to come to the City Council meeting to talk about this topic tonight, and when I looked at the agenda on the website, Just today before I came, it said that this meeting would precede the Cunningham Township Board meeting. So I think I and others were not really anticipating sitting through a 2-hour meeting. So just letting you know that.
And nor were we, actually.
And yet they did it. Everybody stayed.
All right. Rebecca Ochowski.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Obachowski, and I am the Executive Director of Community Choices and one of the main organizers of the Unconference event that Karen mentioned in her statement earlier this evening. So the Unconference was an event, Community Choices is a service organization located in Champaign that serves all of Champaign County to support adults with developmental disabilities and their families. We support over 100 families every year, and one of the main functions that we have is to help build community and create welcoming spaces and connections between people with disabilities and people and groups and events that happen in the community. So the Unconference was an event that we co-sponsored and co-planned with the Urbana Park District, with Imbibe Urbana, and with 25 O'Clock Brewing. So, and this event, the main focus of it was to create community and give an opportunity to people with intellectual disabilities to be seen as leaders and to have a space where they could connect with other people on a fully sort of democratic and equal level. We had been planning this event for months. We were so excited to have the IMC as one of the places that we were going to be having this event. And it was 4 hours before it was supposed to start that we hadn't heard if we were going to be able to continue the event. It was on June 7th and 8th. I think I got an email from people at the IMC at 1 o'clock on June 7th saying that it was okay and that the city had okayed us to go forth with our event. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about what actually happened at that event. And this was an event where people with disabilities and other people in the community were all able to sort of just share their interests and talents and come together. In between two of the different sessions that happened there was about 5 people. One of them had an intellectual disability and 4 of them didn't. A lot of these people had never met each other and were sitting around having a conversation like you might with some people that you just found out that you had a really similar interest with. That's something that doesn't ever happen. And I was so excited to be able to have a space in my community, the community that I have grown up in and lived in and been a citizen of my entire life, to see that was able to be fostered in that space. I would love to be able to continue to have events at the IMC. There are so few places that a nonprofit and a service provider can actually use space in public for a low cost. And with having to have a special use permit, there's very few events that we plan 45 days out. And if we're not going to be able to find out if we can actually have those until a few hours beforehand, there's no way that I would ever, just being a reasonable director of an organization, choose to use that space. I was very excited to hear recently that they were awarded a $75,000 grant to increase their accessibility. Not everybody that I work with has a physical disability, but that has been one of the sort of hindrances. And to know that we can have a welcoming and community-based space that people can access regardless of their physical ability is extremely important to this community. And so to then have that limited by onerous restrictions just seems like it doesn't make any sense and doesn't make this any more welcoming or inclusive of a community. So I think you all should consider going forward to withdraw the restrictions until the city has a chance to respond to you, so that they can, that the events that have been planned can continue. And that people can continue to use this space without, being turned away. I mean, we've already heard from people that have said, people have left. And I think it seems within your power to be able to do that. So I hope that you will move forward.
I'd like to ask a question. Rebecca?
Oh, yes.
So what changed that allowed you to have the event ultimately, even though it was only 4 hours before that you knew that the change had occurred?
It was all having to do with the advocacy on the part of the people at the IMC trying to support the events that were happening there and trying to support the welcoming and inclusive places that they're trying to create.
So basically you convinced staff that it was acceptable to continue with the event?
I think, Karen could probably speak to that better than I could.
So the city's letter said that all events had to have a permit, and so we were in conversation with Lieutenant Sanders, and then the city sent us a letter saying that certain types of events or events before 8 o'clock didn't need a permit. And so that's what changed, is that we finally got permission for things that ended before 8 p.m. could actually go ahead
Okay, thank you.
without a permit.
Bill?
Bill Brown.
First, I did want to say I'm glad that you're going to be more accessible. There have been events I've been involved with planning where we haven't had it there because it hasn't been very accessible. But also, just as a point of information, we can't take any action unless it's on the agenda. So I think there's probably support with two of us to put it on the agenda for next week, at least for discussion, so that if we were to want to take action, then we could at that time.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
Okay, we have two more people. Shall we listen to those and then have a good discussion if we want to? Barry Israelowitz.
Hello, Council. I'm Barry Israelowitz. I'm speaking in support of the Independent Media Center and to tell you why I so strongly support the IMC's ability to hold late-night events. So I've lived in Urbana for over 20 years, got my PhD here in biophysics. I still work for the university. In my spare time, I volunteer for the bike project of Urbana-Champaign. I was one of the founders. I'm currently vice manager, but I'm speaking here today on my own. The bike project is a teaching do-it-yourself community bicycle workshop. It's really two of those. We've got our original all-volunteer shop in downtown Urbana in the basement of the IMC building, and one on campus in collaboration with the university. People come to our workshop with a bike and a need for bicycle repairs, and we show them how to do those repairs. People leave empowered to do bike repairs, empowered to bicycle more every day in all seasons. And also say we're about the best path for people in town, especially people with lower income, to have low-cost, reliable bicycle transportation. Thanks. I think we make a big positive impact on the community. Some very quick numbers. We have right now 600 active members, either paid or via work equity. We are a central part of implementing an annual Light the Night safety program that's installed 20,000 safety lights over 10,000 bikes over 11 years. We have lots of visits. Our downtown Urbana shop in the IMC building has over 1,700 signed-in visits over the last 12 months. We sometimes miss a few if they don't sign in. For police, trouble at our shop in the basement of the IMC building is extremely rare. We've had over 2,000 regularly scheduled open hour sessions over 13 years. We've called police, I think, only 1 or 2 times in the 13 years over misbehaving shop visitors. Our workshop in the basement of the IMC building has scheduled open hours. We skew hours towards community members and to volunteers who work 9 to 5 jobs. So we need nighttime hours. Our weeknight hours tend to be 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. We start after work. Repairs take a while. People are daily doing repairs until the last minute 9 p.m. closing, sometimes a bit later when repairs go long. We need to get those bikes working, checked, and safe. People leave our shop very happy. Now quickly, getting to the IMC. Bike Project has existed since 2012 as a separate organization, entirely independent 501c3 nonprofit. We are renters of our space from the IMC, but from 2006 to 2012, we were a program of the IMC. They acted as a very welcoming incubator for our organization. They were a tremendously supportive incubator, giving us everything we needed to get going quickly, from accounting, trash collecting, air conditioning, to hit the ground running, to grow and grow. It massively magnified the effort of our few volunteers at the time. As you've heard, our mission nearly requires having late night hours to serve working people, and they about always have. So Bike Project does lots of good things. We often do them late at night, but we probably wouldn't exist if not for the IMC. But the IMC is a welcoming place not just for Bike Project, but a wide range of programs that directly help the community. As you've heard, we're far from the only community serving entity in the building. There are programs on music, creative arts, books, technology, more. There certainly can be more. There certainly should be more. Getting real work done takes real time, and community building, real community building, needs real reliable venues for participation and growth. Council, please Don't let the city get in the way of that. Please don't allow restrictions on late-night activity at the IMC.
Thank you. We're getting down to the last one or two. David Cisneros.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I watch this every week, so I feel like I'm now on my favorite TV show. But I'll be brief because you've already heard a lot of what I wanted to say. I guess I wanted to sort of make 3 points that mostly echo what people have already said. One is in support of all the wonderful things that you've already heard that the IMC does. I just made a short list of events that I've been to at the IMC in recent memory, which included concerts, community meetings, activist organization meetings for issues of like racial justice and environmental issues, art shows, events at the Makerspace. So I guess what the message that you're hearing is that the IMC is doing all of these amazing things, and that the issues that are at the heart of this controversy are a very, very tiny sliver of all of these amazing things. I guess another point I wanted to make is that is just to oppose the way that the city has approached this issue, and I know we'll hear more about it, but at least from the perspective that you've heard tonight, it seems like a draconian approach to issue, and somewhat of an unfair approach to treat a community-oriented nonprofit the way really that we would never treat a bar or restaurant in downtown, which is if police were called to all of a sudden have every night that bar would have to request a permit. I mean, I think you've heard that it's a problem that the staff at the IMC have recognized the issues, that are taking proactive steps to prevent them, and it's especially a problem given that the IMC is a not-for-profit, a community serving institution, one that serves the most marginalized in the community. So I guess the third thing I wanted to say is that in addition to all of the other things you've heard, I guess I want to communicate that to just ask the city to sit down again with the board, with the executive team, in good faith to recognize the value, the uniqueness of the IMC, and maybe the harm that has been done and that is planned to be done. To sit down and to consider rescinding the threat of sanctions and to negotiate for the good of the IMC and the good of the community. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. I did receive one card that the individual had forgotten to place their name on it. If there's anybody who had wished to speak, now's your time, please.
My name is, I have.
Is
And
it?
I want to speak, sir.
Okay, then please come forward.
Did you see that?
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
At the time, okay.
I'll be brief.
Take as long as you want, Evelyn.
No, they're not going to let me do that. I'm Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, and I just wanted to merely say that I'm a 66, probably not as long as that gentleman, but I've been in Urbana-Champaign for 66 years. And I've been with the IMC for not as long as Danielle and Belden Fields, because they started it. But before that, Belden Fields was with Professor Eubanks and I. He was at the university, and he was telling us about the things that he wanted to do. But quickly, Grandpa, yeah, Wellfeld, and I and Aaron Ammons and Carol Ammons, every week at 4 o'clock, see you Citizens for Peace and Justice. Woo! And from there, we had a lot of activities there at the IMC, the beloved IMC. And I just want to say it has been in the past inclusive youth of color and people of color. And I just hope it stays that way. But I just wanted to say this. We, people of color, who've had activities there, was mindful of the fact that we had to make sure we had security. So we would do like, well, I and other people that I talked to would make sure we had 5 or 6 people dressed, and they were our security. We didn't have to call the police because they were our security. We had a wonderful time, and we had our own security, and everything went well. We knew it would, but we wanted to be mindful. And but we want to make sure that it stays. I'm supporting our president. That's why I'm speaking, Sister Karen Medina. So that's all I wanted to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I do appreciate the energy. Yes, you may. Yes, please come forward.
My name is Susan Parenti. I'm sorry, Carol Mitten, I don't know what you represent. Could you tell me? Because it seems like you have a lot of responses to all these things. And are you part of the city's administration? I don't know who you are.
Yes. City administrator.
I think you're supposed to testify, but that is my...
No, you just were like a new person that just came on the scene. Okay, good, thank you. I will make this much briefer. I had a brilliant speech, which I won't give. I did want to say that Margaret Mead in 1978 predicted the IMC. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of intelligent and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, they are the only group that can." And I think that saying was said in prediction of the IMC. It's been a place that's been a warm nest for small, not large, not 2,000 likes on your Facebook page, small groups of people who find no huge bureaucracy making things difficult for them. Meaning no bureaucracy that says 45 days, $100, et cetera. People that are trying to change something don't have a secretary that can call 50 days in advance. Don't have a planning committee like the university does, et cetera. You get an idea, you need a space. Margaret Mead forgot to say that, you need a space. And it should not be a lot of money. And then you go there, and the IMC has been this, because it's the whenness of social change, not only the whatness. But I actually want to talk about something, I'm hearing my beloved friends, the reason I live in Urbana and Champaign, we're making arguments for the importance of the work that the IMC is doing. And in some ways, I want to speak for a moment of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a really slimy thing, because bureaucracy will never disagree that your work isn't important. It'll just make it look like it's beside the point. Bureaucracy will always talk about safety, liability. You're doing good work, but, and then starts the almighty but, we're only concerned with safety, liability. One small example for those of you that might have remembered, the Champaign County Nursing Home, when it used to be on Vine or something, the earlier one, used to have a wonderful program where little kids, they had a daycare center, Danielle, you know this, little kids that were in the same building as the nursing home would, between 2 and 3, walk over to where the old people were sitting. And they would sit on the lap of the old people. And it would make everybody's day. It was needs and offers. The kids needed a lap. The adults needed a connection. And it was something that I, in my work with my partner, Patch Adams, would talk about around the world, that this was a brilliant solution, where the old people offered something and needed something, and the little kids did too. But bureaucracy came. And what did bureaucracy said? It's universal text. They were concerned with safety. Little kids might fall off the lap. Liability, maybe the daughter of an old person would sue, and so they got rid of that program. Now, I can see, somebody said, we should talk with the city. The city should apologize for abominable behavior. And And if bureaucracy is, because what people will do, I'm just warning us all, they will say, oh, we love the IMC, we like the fact that you work with adults with, blah, blah, blah. But then they'll bring in liability, safety, we're just trying to do our job. So I want to alert us about the snake of bureaucracy that's going to come. And we're in a time period where people will just not simply say, we don't like a place where black people are. They can't say that. It doesn't sound good. Bureaucracy always sounds good. So I'm really mostly warning us. And I'm asking you to step up. And, this is obviously, we don't have to be defending the IMC. The city has to defend itself for abominable behavior. That's the thing. Okay, bye.
Okay, very good. I think that the community has come forward and made an excellent case of concern, and it'll be the intent of the city council to try to address it.
Thank you so much.
Eric?
I've been doing a little research with half of my mind, while half of it has been listening. So what the website says is a special event is an activity that materially affects the ordinary allocation of city personnel or the ordinary use of city streets, sidewalks, or parking lots. None of those apply. Now, I have been looking at the ordinance, and there seems to be a gap in the ordinance, and there isn't an exemption for an organization like the IMC. We can't take any action now. I can express an opinion. My opinion is fix the ordinance so that an organization like the IMC would have an exemption. And in the meantime, until we do that, you, of course, are free to do whatever you feel you should do, but my advice would be to back off and let them do what they do.
Okay. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Are we on the agenda for the next meeting?
We've requested it, yes.
So watch the agendas.
Watch the police.
Okay, we're going to go back to some of the business that we came to address as well. Report from the Committee of the Whole. Oh, we don't have any unfinished business. So we go to reports of a standing committee, the Committee of the Whole. Councilmember Alice Wu.
Hello. Thank you very much. On behalf of the committee, I would like to move approval of resolution number 2019-06025R, resolution relating to participation by elected officials in the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mary Alice Wu makes a proposed, and Jared seconds. Is there discussion? Right, I guess we need roll call vote.
Council members Brown?
Yes.
Hersey?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Ordinance number 2000, oh, you're going to do this. Go
Yes.
ahead, please, the next
Thank
one.
you. Ordinance number 2019-06036, an ordinance approving a redevelopment agreement with Markson's Affiliates LLC for the Urbana Landmark Hotel. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
I will second that.
I think Jared made the second. Is there a discussion? There's been a slight a revision to some of the wording in the document. I don't know if we need to have a review of that
Yes.
before we go through, but it might be wise.
Yeah, I think so.
Brandon Boyce.
I'll briefly summarize the changes that were made to the agreement since the council last reviewed this at the Committee of the Whole meeting. There was a updated memo sent out earlier today. The primary changes to the redevelopment agreement were we added further clarification to the definition of eligible redevelopment project costs. We defined the project commencement date as of July 1st, 2020, and that is the developer's deadline to start the project. It's really, they can start earlier than that date. We clarified the developer's minimum equity participation during the project construction. We took away the percentage and included an absolute number, 3.025 million, and we arrived at that number by taking 20% of the minimum project cost that's shown in the exhibit with the project budget. We also added a new city obligation to resurface the segment of West Green Street in the right-of-way that is immediately south of the hotel property. It's shown in a new Exhibit D that was added to the agreement. This is the right-of-way, the stub of West Green Street that's immediately in front of Lincoln Square Mall. And it should be noted as well that the MCOR project, currently the improvements that are set to occur there, will terminate at the intersection of Race and West Green Street, leaving this stub of asphalt that won't be receiving any improvements as a result of that project. So the proposal is that the city would carry out the asphalt patching of this portion of West Green Street under an upcoming citywide contract that will allow the city to realize some cost savings in the process over what it would cost to perform this on its own. In addition, the city would also remove or repair that existing circle landscape planter that's located in the same area of right-of-way. Cash expenses for the city to meet these obligations are not expected to exceed $30,000, and they could be covered with funds from the Central TIF District. So on with the list of changes. The city took out some of the language describing the restaurant obligation for the developer, replacing it with just associating that with the requirements of the brand, the Hilton Tapestry brand, which will have requirements for the restaurant. We also associated the term of the redevelopment agreement with the repayment of city bonds, such that once the city's bonds are repaid through the new revenues generated from the project, that could also trigger the end of the term of the agreement. And lastly, we made note of the developer's desire to charge up to a 4% developer's fee. That would be depending on the availability of unused contingency in the project budget. Staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Jared first.
I'm sure we were probably all going to ask the same things, but I'll go ahead and ask the two that were most important to me. One, I was curious about the removal of the language about the restaurant as required by the franchisor. I'm not familiar with what the language is in the requirement to them from Tapestry. But that's one. And then the other one would be about their 4% fee. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So the restaurant component, the city had language in the original drafting of the agreement that we'd actually borrowed from a prior agreement that was somewhat similar to this, that obligated the developer to create a full-service restaurant. So we want something that's an amenity and an attraction. I'll just remind council that when that language was first drafted under a prior proposal, that developer didn't have a brand associated with the project as concretely as is happening here. When we were going back and forth between the developer, they aren't sure exactly who will operate the restaurant. They aren't completely sure what concept they'd like to pursue. They'd like to maintain the maximum flexibility, and we'd like them to have a product that they find successful, both financially and in terms of meeting the obligation of the brand. So we remove terms like full-service restaurant from the agreement to give them that flexibility.
Brandon, did you also then, what about the catering? That would be a significant need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or not?
Well, it's not specific. The only place catering was mentioned was in the exhibit, and that was also in the letter of intent. But we just stayed true to that intent or that agreement, that understanding with the developer, that they would meet the minimum requirements of a restaurant for the Hilton Tapestry brand. They would seek to operate that efficiently, and we wouldn't meddle in the operation of the restaurant, which frankly is a minor detail in the scope of this project.
And you had
the 4% developer's fee. So as was actually pointed out in the SB Friedman memo, that the developer didn't include a developer's fee in their project budget. And so they wanted to retain the ability to charge one. And so staff included that in their total contingency. So the idea is that the fee is not intended to reduce their minimum project cost of $15.1 million for the construction, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, consultants, permits, and inspection fees. So the full project needs to proceed as planned for the minimum amount, and if they're successful in not utilizing their full contingency line, which again, this is a major renovation of a historic property with multiple additions, so there's plenty of risk involved. They need to meet the requirements of our local Historic Preservation Commission for certificates of appropriateness, any zoning or building code requirements of the city. There'll be plenty of those. They have to work with the State Historic Preservation Office in their pursuit of federal tax credits, and they also have to satisfy the requirements of the Hilton brand. If they can do all that and achieve the brand and the certificate of occupancy, that's when the city's funds arrive. Right now, their minimum project cost is $15.1 million. If they can stick to that, or not use up all their contingency, then they can pay themselves up to a 4% fee. That's our understanding of how they would proceed.
Can I just follow?
Go
So
ahead.
that's not a fee as in like our extra tax, right? This is they can pay themselves
as part of the project budget. Yeah. But we would only, or what's reflected here is that that would be acceptable so long as it doesn't cut into their minimum project cost. They have to get the project done first and foremost.
Okay.
And I think that's their goal as well, is to get the project done rather than pay themselves.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
We'll just go around the room here. Bill, did you?
Yeah. Was one of the changes that the mayor would make the final approval instead of us approving the final document? Or was that the way it was originally?
That's the language of the ordinance that's approving this agreement, is that it's approved in substantially the form exhibited here too, or something along those lines.
Okay.
And what that allows for is minor corrections.
So these other things like the making the restaurant language agree with the restaurant language in their boutique hotel agreement, would that be considered a minor thing that might have changed, and then the mayor would have been able to approve that without ours?
Yeah, well, specifically, in the Exhibit C, we had already struck the language in the agreement that removed the full-service restaurant language and just associate it with the brand. However, and we'd actually already committed to make the change, the list of additional project elements in Exhibit A, we hadn't struck the like language there. So that kind of thing where the intent was already clearly established, yes, we would just be cleaning up language, adjusting dates slightly, as long as we're not materially changing the obligation of the city.
And then, so, can you remind me, I was looking at the bond value analysis again, and where it breaks down the new revenues expected and how it would add up to pay off the bond over 10 years. I know when we had our individual briefings, it was clear that the new revenues took into account that some of that might have come to Urbana anyway, like especially the hotel rooms. I don't know what the percentage it was, but it might assume that 30 or 40, 50% of those rooms would have been sold anyway to some other hotel in Urbana, with probably a lower room rate. We wouldn't have got as much tax, but you took all that into consideration. You aren't treating this as though every room rented at the boutique hotel is new revenue, right?
That's correct. I don't recall the specific number, but we discounted the revenue in the bond model on the front end.
Okay.
But I do not believe we applied a similar discount to the boutique hotel motel tax, because that
would
is
be
only
new.
for this
Okay.
hotel.
That makes sense. Then for the changes in the restaurant and catering, I assume that in the bond value analysis and how we're going to pay that back, you've made certain assumptions about if they're going to have conventions and cater them. That seems like it's a pretty significant portion of the restaurant sales for the hotel. So would that change those figures much? I don't know what the minimum requirements are for that brand, but it could be, a lunch counter and early dinner or something. It might not be very substantial since it's a boutique hotel, and it's great for other businesses in downtown. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but just as far as paying back the bonds go, seems like there would be less revenue coming in from the hotel itself.
Yes, we discussed that internally. On page 4 of the original memo, it shows the total amounts of revenue coming from the different sources.
Food and beverage was 300-some thousand, so it wouldn't. So even if it cut that in half, it might be 150,000 over 10 years or something. Does that sound right?
Yes, but it's over the total 10-year revenue is 8.2 million. So the total revenue there is about, it's less than 4% of the total. So changing that doesn't have a big impact on the model.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible it could reduce it, but we also don't know. Giving them full flexibility might allow them to pursue a model that, maximizes revenue. We're just allowing them to sort that out with the brand and the market.
Okay, and then just one last question, and that wasn't a change, it was just something I noticed this time around. The term of the agreement is set at 20 years, but a lot of the things are expected to be paid off in 10 years. And can you explain what the 20 years is? It seems like everything is pretty much pegged to 10 years, but there's a 20-year figure in there for the term of the agreement. Do we still plan to sell 10-year bonds?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why the language was added that allows the term of the agreement to expire after, except for those
when they're
provisions
paid off.
that survive the agreement. Yeah, at the time it's paid off with new revenues. So if that is less than 20 years, I actually asked that question of Ken Beth, our special counsel who drafted this agreement, and he just, I think it was just trying to be conservative and inclusive of any possible scenario. But the developer asked a similar question, and that's how we came to the language about allowing the term to also end when bond repayment occurs.
Okay.
So we didn't modify the original language.
Great, thanks.
Okay, further? Anybody else? Who'd like, Mary Alice Wu.
So that was my question that Bill just asked, and I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
If the term agreement, so let's think positively, and we pay off all of our loans in 8 years. So that would mean that this agreement would be null. And so if they wanted to change it from a Hilton Tapestry to another brand, that would be allowed. I just want to confirm, is that correct or incorrect?
I would have to ask an attorney the answer to that question. But.
I'll admit I was checking something different. Ordinances. Repeat your question, please.
So let's say that we are able to pay off our bonds in 8 years, in which case this agreement will be null and void because of the language that we put in there that as soon as our bonds are paid off, the agreement's over. So if they want to change their brand of hotel after that time period, are they allowed according to this agreement?
I believe that if the agreement then terminates at
So
the end.
everything in this agreement is null and void as long as our bonds are paid off?
Unless there is a very express provision that a term,
survives the
typically an
agreement.
indemnity or something like that, survives the expiration of the agreement.
Okay, thank you. Would they be willing to add in something that at minimum, they would keep it at 10 years for Hilton Tapestry? I mean, that's kind of what we've been operating under. I mean, I don't
That
think we're
is
going to
true.
pay off our bonds within 10 years, but,
I mean, we set the term at 10 years because that's our expectation of how long it will take the city to receive sufficient revenues for this. Earlier performance means the city's abdicated of that risk at an earlier date. Carol,
I
you wanna
might
add something?
just offer that the brand and our insistence on the brand in the agreement is because it's like our insurance policy, because we are relying on some of the things that they're requiring, so that we're not separately requiring it. We're like, it's good enough for Hilton, and it's good enough for us. Who are we to judge? But once we're paid back, we're no longer, in a sense, the financial partner of the developer anymore at that point. And so that's why that requirement would lapse.
Dennis, can I respond?
Yeah, you certainly can.
Thank you.
We're having a discussion.
I actually would disagree, and this is why. I think that the city has invested a heck of a lot of time into the Lincoln Hotel, staff resources, and part of that means that we are, yes, investing money, which we hopefully will get paid back, but we're also investing all of our resources of staff to see this project to fruition. So I would like to argue that that whole process and all this time that we've put into this project is to have a high level of a hotel in downtown Urbana. That's the whole reason why we've been doing this, right? So I guess what I'm saying is it's more than just paying the bond back. We want to ensure that we have a high-quality hotel in our city based on this investment that we are doing. So that's my point in terms of if we're operating under this kind of assumption that we're going to have a high-quality hotel at least for 10 years, then I think it would be prudent for us to include that. Now, I understand. I'm not going to insist, but I'm going to request. How about that?
Fine, we can ask.
Okay.
Does that mean, Carol, that we would be then sort of making that a part of a negotiation with the developer?
Well, given that we're not going to insist on it, I wouldn't say that it's part of a negotiation. I think it's a request from council, and it's one that they will either find it acceptable to accommodate or not.
That's, I guess, what I meant, that the developer is the one who's going to be responding to
Yes.
to Mary Alice's request.
Yes. But I don't know that we need to hold anything up this evening for
James.
that.
The one provision that Alderperson Wu is concerned about, we control. We can decide if we want to pay the bonds off early or not. If the bonds are paid off in 10 years, then it's a question, the agreement's over.
No. So you're saying that our bond repayment could be modulated?
No, the loan arrangement for paying off the bond with whoever acquires the bond, what's going to govern. If we want to balance paying off the bond early with a question about the brand, we can do that. I mean, I'm not suggesting we pay the bonds longer. If the bond term is 10 years, we have to pay them off within 10 years. The other point with that is if they have a tapestry brand for 8 years, and it's successful, then my guess is why fix what isn't broke? They would, I would guess, want to continue that brand or a similar brand, comparable brand and all. And obviously, while the agreement's in force, if they want to do that, they're going to have to get your approval to amend the agreement.
Cherise.
Okay, so my understanding then is that if, like Mary Alice said, if we pay it off early, Tapestry can leave. The Tapestry brand can leave, and it could end up being a Days Inn.
I don't know whether the developer is going to go to Days Inn, but let's assume that. The point is if we pay off the bonds early, then the agreement, as I understand it, expires, and they are free to do that which they wish for the brand.
So the Hilton brand can just leave. I guess this is what I'm asking. The Hilton brand could just leave, and it would be up, the hotel, the brand would be up for grabs, Or they could decide to stay, even if we pay it off, but they won't be obligated to stay.
Well, you have to understand the agreement doesn't obligate Hilton.
Right.
It obligates the developer.
Okay.
If, let's say, Hilton decides to, for some reason, change the brand, maybe they call it something else other than Tapestry, the developer is going to, while the agreement's in effect, is going to have to come to the city and say, Hilton is no longer, let's say, offering a Tapestry brand. They're going to give it a different name, or they want to give us a different brand, or we'd rather go to Marriott or Hyatt or whoever for a comparable brand. They're going to, as long as the agreement's in effect, they're going to have to come to you, because that requires an amendment to the agreement.
Mhm.
So you will be presented with that. If the bonds are paid off and the agreement then is retired at 8 years, 2 years, 10 years, the developer will be free to decide what it's going to do with the brand.
And they can stay or go.
They can decide to find another brand or no brand. But that's because the agreement has expired.
Okay.
And also, I wanted Brandon, if you would address a question that I had earlier, maybe just share it. The developer stated that he expected to hold the property into the near future, which isn't really a commitment for 10 years. And so in our conversation earlier today, you indicated that, yeah, it would be possible for the developer, once the hotel was opening and meeting the conditions of the Tapestry brand, that the developer could potentially sell the property. Is that correct?
Yes, in the assignment language at the back of the agreement, there are essentially 3 conditions under which the developer can assign the agreement without prior approval from the council. One is any assignment of the agreement as collateral for financing, which is common in our agreements. 2, any related sale, assignment, or transfer in whole to a legal entity having common ownership, which is also common to have. Those are things they may need to utilize in order to put the deal together. But the third is what was created specifically for this agreement. That's any sale or assignment or transfer of the hotel facility under circumstances where the Tapestry collection by Hilton Properties brand will be maintained in accordance with this agreement. So if the developer completes the project, receives their reimbursement from the city, which only occurs after the Hilton brand has been awarded, then they would have the ability to sell the property without prior approval by the council. However, the last section points out that no sale or assignment can happen, or I'm sorry, they still have to notify the city, though. I mean, we will be informed.
Mhm.
We won't have prior approval, though.
Right. This is a person who's...
If the brand changes, then the approval would be required.
We're working with a developer who develops properties but doesn't necessarily run them. And so therefore he might...
Yes, we had representatives from the operator
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
Kinseth Hospitalities.
Okay, Jared.
Just a quick motion. We're about to run out of time, and we still have a couple appointments to go over. So I'd motion that we continue the meeting for 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll second.
All right. It's a timely motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, now, any opposed? All right, we're extending. All right, Bill Brown.
Since this will be the last action we take on this, and then it'll be signed by the mayor and may have some minor changes in between,
Mhm.
can I ask that we get a copy of the final agreement and it be posted on the website as an informational item?
Sure.
For the council meeting following that?
Certainly.
Okay. Further discussion, Mary Alice.
So you had just said that they could sell this to another person who would run the Tapestry brand. Does that mean that this agreement would then transfer with that new ownership? I just want to confirm that that's the case.
Yeah, they're obligated to assign the whole agreement to any new owner.
Okay,
But
so they would be the
we don't
same
have advance
terms.
approval.
Okay,
Yes.
I just, thank you.
All right, further, okay, I guess we could be voting. We've had it, we've had the motion and we've had the second, Mary Alice Wu, seconded by Gerard Miller. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Oh, roll call. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Councilmembers Brown,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes,
and Wu.
Yes.
okay, that passes. Good luck to us all.
To us all, a leap into the unknown.
All right, okay, we have a discussion of consolidated social service subrecipient agreements. See, did we want to talk about that some more? Do you want
let's
to
not.
confer that to the other?
Can I
Let's not.
suggest that we not talk about this one?
Okay,
Yes.
so we want to delay
Can-
that to another meeting?
Yes, put a stopper in it.
Charlie wants us to state when we're going to bring it up, so should we,
Next week.
next council or next committee?
We don't have action
It's
yet,
just
so,
discussion, so
yeah.
it's just in direction to staff, so
Right.
it can be,
Bring
it
it
can
back
be due
next
next
week.
committee, yeah.
All right, to bring back next week. Okay. Anybody oppose that idea? Okay, very good. All right, reports of special committees? Seeing none? New business. Okay, the first thing that we see here is the ordinance, which has been moved to our next city council meeting, which was the variance on the sign on University Avenue. Next, mayoral reappointments to boards and commissions. And the mayor has forwarded to the Design Review Board with the term ending June 30th, 2022, Nancy Ortego, Adam Rush. And then there was also an appointment date correction, which I think came to us in a memo.
Matt Cho and Scott Kunkel.
Yes,
Matt
thank you.
Cho and Scott Kunkel.
And it was their appointment was adjusted to
June 30th, 2022 expiration.
Oh, yeah,
on the
there it is,
Design
okay,
Review
at the
Board.
bottom, yes. So, all right. It was extended to June 30th, 2021.
Correct.
All right.
I move we approve these appointments followed promptly by adjournment.
Well, you missed one name.
There's one more, there's,
One more name.
Oh, one more name.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Historic Preservation Commission, term ending June 30th, 2022, Gina Paluso.
Okay.
So these are the.
I move approval.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, Jared Miller and
Mary Alice.
Mary Alice Wu. Discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None, and therefore that passes, and now no further business. We will be adjourned.
Thank you, Jesus.